Chapter 308. Ah! On the battlefield, the primordial king let out a shrill scream as the purple pagoda broke. Then, the seal approached the primordial king's body, and the majestic destructive power instantly exploded his body. The primordial king's soul immediately left his body, but before he could escape, the seal buzzed and directly swallowed him. Then, he turned into nothingness and dissipated. Rumble! After the primordial king was killed, all the ancient warships in the void vibrated at the same time, releasing a fearful aura. They wanted to escape, but the void seemed to be locked down. The ancient warships couldn't penetrate the void and come and go as they pleased. "Since you're here, do you still want to leave?" As his calm voice faded, Chu Bei raised his hand and pointed to the sky. His eyes narrowed. Suddenly, countless pitch-black gaps appeared in the distant sky. An incomparably huge light beam appeared from each gap. Some were black, some were purple, and some were blue. Several lifelike brontosaurus could be vaguely seen swimming in each light beam. Bang! 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 Chu Bei waved his sleeve, and countless light beams smashed down at the same time, accurately hitting the ancient warships. In the blink of an eye, half of the ancient warships arrived in eastern wilderness. At the same time, the giant palm in Chu Bei's avatar turned into a giant sword and directly swept out. Wherever the sword light passed, the ancient warships would be sliced into two halves and explode. In less than 3 minutes, the thousands of ancient warships that invaded eastern wilderness were all smashed into pieces. The pungent smell of blood filled the sky, and it was nauseating. Below the divine light barrier, all the eastern wilderness cultivators looked up at the scene in the sky in a daze. Even though the battle was over, they still hadn't recovered from the shock. Their burning gazes were fixed on the emperor-like figure. Their throats squirmed, and only worship and respect were left in their eyes. "Is it over? Are all the invading primordial creatures dead? He killed all the primordial kings alone. Boss Chu is mighty and domineering. This crisis really came quickly and left even faster." Countless cultivators in the eastern wilderness looked at the distant sky in a daze. They were still in a daze. When they came back to their senses, they were all excited and in high spirits. Ever since the primeval king led countless ancient life forms to invade, they were already prepared to fight to the death in order to protect their homeland. But the result was that they didn't do anything from start to finish. They were just spectators. The godlike Boss Chu, who was like an ancient emperor, unleashed a barrier of divine light to protect them. Then, he unleashed a peerless mystique to kill the immemorial king first, then all of the invading immemorial creatures, leaving none alive. "As expected of my faith." Ji Ziyue's eyes were filled with stars as she rubbed her fair hands excitedly. "One day, I will also reach such heights," Yi Fan muttered as he looked at the figure in the sky. His eyes were filled with determination and yearning. "I wonder how the other 4 regions are doing." Jiang Taishu heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that all of the invading enemies were destroyed. It was as if a huge rock had been lifted from his heart. As for the other 4 regions, although he missed them, he wouldn't ask for Chu Bei's help. After all, he didn't know what kind of person Chu Bei was. He was already very grateful that Chu Bei had protected the eastern wilderness. Buzz! 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 Chu Bei stood in the sky with his hands behind his back. He glanced at the densely packed fragments of the battleships and waved his sleeve. With himself as the center, divine light spread out. In the buzzing sound, the fragments of the battleships disappeared along with the barrier of divine light. After a short while, everything returned to normal, as if nothing had happened. "Thank you, Boss Chu, for helping." As he walked, Chu Bei had already returned to Yi Fan and the others. Jiang Taishu, the Alcade Saint leader, the leader of the Ji family, and the other top cultivators of the Eastern Barren Territory immediately bowed respectfully. Rumble! The battle in the Western Desert was getting more and more intense. Bloody corpses, organs, and brains could be seen everywhere. The smell of blood in the air was nauseating. There were countless corpses of Western Desert monks and primordial beasts. It was a horrible sight. Kill! The roar was deafening. The sky, the land, the lake, and the forest were shining brightly. All kinds of weapons were flying, and countless Dharma runes were floating. At this moment both the western desert monks and the primordial creatures had gone all out on the battlefield. They would not rest until one of them was dead. Damn it! Are all the primordial beasts so terrifying? Even the supreme weapons can't do anything to them. The great Thunderclap Temple Abbot, Allen Temple Abbot, Agon Temple Abbot, and the other abbots Buddha Aura shot into the sky. Their faces were extremely pale. Even though they worked together to activate the 7-story pagoda, they were still suppressed by the primordial beasts. It could be said that they were losing. Pfft! Agon Temple Abbot, who was the weakest among them, spat out a mouthful of blood. His face was pale. Why continue to struggle? Why don't you end your own life and save me the trouble? As the cold and gloomy voice rang out, the immemorial king, whose entire body was jet black, with every inch of his skin shining with a black light, and who had 8 arms like an 8-armed Buddha, punched the 7-floored pagoda again and again. Each of his punches seemed to carry the laws of the great Tao. With each punch, the void fluctuated as if an immortal god was bombarding the 3 realms. Bang! The primordial beast's attacks became fiercer and more powerful. Countless temples below collapsed in the aftermath, turning into ruins. Buzz! Buzz! Under the primordial beast's continuous attacks, the abbot's aura began to become unstable. Finally, with a trembling sound, the 7-story pagoda was sent flying. Sacrifice my blood to the glazed pagoda! As the voice sounded, the great Thunderclap Temple Abbot's blood gushed out of his body and rushed into the 7-story pagoda. In an instant, the 7-story pagoda seemed to have completely awakened, releasing an even more dazzling golden light. Blood-red demonic runes soared into the sky, and beams of light containing the great Tao of heaven and earth pierced through the void and shot toward the primordial beasts once again. As expected of the great Emperor's weapon! Sensing the terrifying aura of the 7-story pagoda, the primordial beasts only frowned slightly. They were still fearless. His 8 arms weaved a web of laws between heaven and earth and met the attack. Lan, So, Voidless, go to eastern wilderness, northern plains, southern ridge, and middle ground respectively, and see how they are doing. If they still have strength, quickly ask them to come and help. The great Thunderclap Temple Abbot burned his blood essence, and looked at the 4 eminent monks who were fighting with the primordial beasts not far away. Yes, Abbot! After receiving the order, the 4 eminent monks did not hesitate and immediately retreated from the battlefield. Northern plains. Snow swirled in the air as ice and snow mixed together. The picturesque scene was completely gone, and only a bloody battlefield was left. It was like hell on earth. Icebergs collapsed, the ice plains shattered, and corpses were everywhere. Looking over, the original white was replaced by a horrifying blood-red color. The air was filled with a pungent smell of blood that was nauseating. The battle continued. Countless cultivators screamed and used all their strength. You bastards won't have a good ending! Looking at the blood-stained ice and the increasing number of human cultivators, the Ice God Palace Master's eyes were bloodshot. She wanted nothing more than to tear the primordial beasts into pieces. The head of the Wang family of the Ancients, and the leader of the Ancients' giant race, also glared at the primordial beasts. Other than murderous intent, there was also unwillingness and helplessness in their eyes. This primordial beast was far more terrifying than they had imagined. Even if they used the great Emperor's weapon together, they were still not his match. More terrifyingly, as time went on, the primordial beasts became fiercer and fiercer. The terrifying power in his body seemed to be continuously awakening. At first, they could still use the great Emperor's weapon to stall the primordial beasts. But now, every punch the primordial beasts threw out was shocking. It was like a demon had descended. Southern Ridge. Damn it! Do you really want the barbarian race to die? The leader of the barbarian race was covered in blood. The red wounds on his body were shocking. He looked around at the countless corpses of his race and roared sorrowfully. The leader of the War God Hall and the leader of the Southern Ridgyao race also looked at the figure not far away. The Shifter Emperor's ruler hovered in front of the leader of the Southern Ridgyao race and buzzed with great emperor's might. A bunch of ants. Let's see how long you can last! The Primordial King, who had 6 wings on his back and was bathed in purple flames, cast a cold glance at the tribe leader of the Berserker tribe, the Temple Master of War God Hall, and the tribe leader of the Southern Mountain Demons. He flapped his 6 wings and a destructive force swept out as he charged forward once again. Middle ground. Although it was not as one-sided as the Western Desert, Southern Ridge, and Northern Plains, it was still on the weaker side. Thousands of ancient warships soared through the sky, releasing a monstrous aura that caused the void to sizzle. Countless primordial creatures released sharp killing intent. They rushed up to kill anyone they saw. It was as if they had gone mad and didn't care about life or death. In this war, the originally prosperous middle ground had turned into a tragic ruin. Corpses and blood could be seen everywhere. While countless cultivators and primordial creatures were engaged in a bloody battle, in another part of the sky, the battle between 4 middle-aged men dressed in dragon robes and a primordial king had reached its climax. To be exact, the Great Xia Emperor, the Guhua Emperor, the 9 Li Emperor, and the Divine Prefecture Emperor were jointly activating a human-shaped golden battle suit to fight the primordial king. The golden battle suit held a golden sacred sword and carried a golden divine bow on its back. It was as if it was alive. Although the primordial king was strong, the golden battle suit was only slightly weaker than the former under the joint activation of the 4 emperors. It was barely able to hold on. I've underestimated your foundation. I'm sure the 4 of you are the strongest of the human race in this era. I didn't expect you to have such an extreme battle suit. This was a human-shaped primordial king with thick golden hair and a pair of golden ancestral dragon horns. After knocking back the golden battle suit with a punch, he looked at the 4 emperors mockingly. But how long can you guys last? The final outcome won't change. As soon as he finished speaking, the primordial king laughed without any scruples. The aura he released was incomparably terrifying and made people tremble. Then, he leaped past the golden battle suit and slapped the 4 emperors. The void collapsed. The dazzling laws of heaven and earth fell from the sky like a rainbow, suppressing the 4 emperors with a monstrous aura. Prepare to awaken the Lord Guardian! The Great Xia Emperor, the Guhua Emperor, the 9 Li Emperor, and the Divine Prefecture Emperor looked at each other, as if they had made an important decision. After the 4 emperors made their decision, their hands danced at the same time, and quickly formed a strange seal. As the seal was formed, the energy in this world began to riot, accompanied by the strange sound of the great Tao. Chapter 309. Eastern Wilderness. Above a forest, a huge teleportation formation with a diameter of 100 meters lit up with a demonic light and dazzling runes. With a buzzing sound, a figure appeared in the teleportation formation. It was an eminent monk. He was wearing a slightly gorgeous kasaya, but there was an anxious look on his face. However, when he came out of the teleportation formation and saw everything around him, the anxious look on his face was instantly replaced by surprise and confusion. The mountain was still full of birds and flowers, clear spring water flowed, and lush trees rose from the ground. It was full of vitality. There was no killing, no roaring, no gorgeous light surging, no horrifying corpses, no ancient warships in the sky, and no countless Archean creatures or powerful Archean kings. Is this not the Eastern Wilderness? Or do the Archean creatures look down on the Eastern Wilderness? Alan's gaze swept the surroundings as she muttered with a puzzled look on her face. Logically speaking, even if the Eastern Wilderness resisted the attack of the Archean creatures, they would have to pay a heavy price. How could it be so normal? Swoosh! 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 Who are you? Just as Alan was confused, several air-piercing sounds were heard, and at the same time, a shout echoed in his ears. A group of divine rainbows streaked across the sky and appeared around the teleportation formation in an instant. This teleportation formation was jointly guarded by the Yaoguang Sacred Ground, the Ji family of the Ancients, the Jade Lake Sacred Ground, and many other top forces. The first group to arrive was the patrol team from the Yaoguang Sacred Ground. "Friends, I'm from the Western Desert. May I know if this place belongs to the Eastern Wilderness?" Alan asked. "Of course, this is the territory of the Yaoguang Sacred Ground," a patrol member said. Alan immediately asked, "Didn't the Archean creatures invade the Eastern Wilderness?" "They did, but they're all dead," a patrol member replied. "What? Dead?" Alan's mouth opened wide in disbelief. He asked again, "How many of them did they send? Were there Archean kings?" "Thousands of warships. Their auras are quite terrifying. Moreover, they were led by an Archean king. It's extremely terrifying," the patrol member said seriously. "Then why did you still win? What about those warships? And those corpses? How did you deal with it?" Alan Che was completely confused. He stretched out his hand and pointed around. "Since there was a big battle, why can't I find any traces of battle?" In response to Alan's series of questions, the patrol members looked at each other and smiled. Then, they gave a brief description of Chu Bei's feat of single-handedly killing all the ancient creatures. "Boss Chu! He single-handedly killed the primordial king and tens of thousands of primordial creatures. Could he be an ancient emperor?" After listening to the patrol member, Alan was stunned, as if he could not believe his ears. It was as if he had been hit by a bolt from the blue, or as if someone had poured a basin of cold water on him from head to toe. His whole body was numb. After recovering from the shock, Alan suddenly revealed a look of joy and excitement. If what these patrol members said was true, that Boss Chu could single-handedly kill all the primordial creatures, as long as they could invite him, the Western Desert would be saved. Thinking of this, Alan looked at one of the patrol members excitedly and asked him patiently, "Fellow cultivators, the Western Desert has also been invaded by the primordial creatures. All the great masters are doing their best to kill the primordial king. Right now, the Western Desert has become a bloody battlefield. Perhaps only Boss Chu can save us. Please tell me, where is Boss Chu? The Jiang family of the primordial era." After getting the answer, Alan thanked them profusely and turned into a divine rainbow, disappearing into the sky in an instant. "Who are you?" In the sky above the Jiang family, Jiang Taishu narrowed his eyes, and a terrifying aura shrouded the north. Feeling this tyrannical aura, Alan was shocked. Could the person in front of him be Boss Chu? Thinking of this, Alan immediately bowed to Jiang Taishu. "Western Desert's great Thunderclap Temple's first seat, Alan, greets Boss Chu. The Western Desert is in danger. Please help us, Patriarch." "Western Desert's great Thunderclap Temple?" Jiang Taishu looked sympathetic. He took a deep breath and said, "You're wrong. I'm not Boss Chu. As for the Western Desert's crisis, I'll ask Boss Chu for you. Let's make a trip." Before Jiang Taishu could do anything, a calm voice floated in the air. "You're Boss Chu." Looking at the figure that appeared in front of him out of thin air, Senior Monk Alan's tongue trembled, and his face was full of surprise. Obviously, he did not expect that the person who could possibly be the great emperor of old was just a young man who looked to be in his 20s. Buddhists say that saving a life is better than building a 7-story pagoda. Let's go to the Western Desert. As soon as Chu Bei finished speaking, he waved his sleeve. As the lightning dissipated, Yi Fan, Duanda, Ji Ziyue, Jiang Taishu, Alan, and the others disappeared from the sky above the Jiang residence. As time passed, the Western Desert senior monks were defeated beyond recognition. Bloody skeletons could be seen everywhere. Organs and broken brains were everywhere, and the air was filled with the nauseating smell of blood. The senior monks, who were originally full of killing intent, gradually lost their battle intent. The current battle situation was irreversible. They could no longer defend the home that they had lived in for so many years. There were too many primordial creatures, and they were extremely powerful. Even the weakest primordial creature had the strength of a cultivator of the 4 extremities. In front of an absolute gap, even if you burn your blood essence, you can only buy some time. It can't change the outcome at all. In the battlefield, the primordial king's words were filled with mockery as he threw a few punches. Dong dong dong! The fist prints that carried the great Tao's order of heaven and earth kept bombarding the 7-story pagoda. Buzz buzz! The 7-story pagoda trembled and kept shooting out terrifying rune light beams. However, these light beams were no threat to the primordial king at all. Splat! Perhaps it was because he had been burning his blood essence for a long time, but the great Thunderclap Temple's abbot's body suddenly trembled. Then, he spat out several mouthfuls of blood. His face instantly turned pale, and his aura became violent. Abbot, the northern plains can't even protect themselves. Their situation is similar to ours. They are in imminent danger. Monk Also returned to the battlefield and started killing again with a look of despair. Abbot, the southern mountains are in the same situation. Those demons can't even protect themselves. Monk Ainen also returned to the battlefield and sounded helpless. Although the middle continent's situation is better than ours, they are still at a disadvantage. The 4 empires don't have the strength to help us at all. Monk Ah Wu's eyes were bloodshot as he shouted and charged toward a powerful primordial creature. It was as if he was bidding farewell to this world. The Western Desert is really doomed. Hearing the news brought back by Asa, Ainen, and Ah Wu, the great Thunderclap Temple's abbot suddenly laughed crazily. Then, he actually gave up on attacking and sat cross-legged on the ground. He spun the Buddha beads in his hand and began chanting scriptures. Seeing this, Alza Nyener Amushin, and the other abbots looked at each other and smiled. After sighing helplessly, they imitated the great Thunderclap Temple's abbot and sat cross-legged on the ground, chanting scriptures. Namo Hiluo Na To Luo Yi, Polajia Di, Shobo Luo Yi, Namo Siji Di, Amana Yi. In the entire western desert, all the eminent monks gave up on fighting and sat cross-legged on the ground, chanting strange and difficult-to-understand scriptures. For a time, the entire western desert was filled with the sound of scriptures. Countless golden Buddhist words appeared in the sky. A bunch of old bald donkeys, so noisy! Kill them all! The primordial king picked his ears and impatiently gave the order. It was obvious that he hated the sound of scriptures. As soon as Cold in the Forest shouted, he clenched his fists. The surrounding spiritual energy madly surged into the surface of his fists. The primordial law intertwined, and a terrifying aura surged out like a surging river. Rumble! However, just as the primordial king was about to kill the great Thunderclap Temple's abbot, and the other abbots behind him, a huge gap suddenly appeared above his head. A deafening roar came from the gap. The sudden roar caused the primordial king's pupils to shrink. A chill inexplicably surged up his back. Perhaps out of instinct, the primordial king's fists, which had been accumulating power, changed the direction of his attack and hit the pitch-black gap. With another loud bang, a beam of purple light with a diameter of 1,000 feet shot out from the gap and instantly shattered the primordial king's fist. Then, in the midst of the soul-stirring roar, a 10,000 feet wide saber formed by intertwining divine lights slowly emerged from the gap. The blade emitted a sky-blue light. The primordial king was dumbfounded. Before he could react, the 10,000 feet wide saber slashed down. It was unknown whether it was a saber gleam or lightning, but a terrifying linear light wave instantly pierced through the primordial king's glabella to his lower body. Whoosh! Almost instantly, the imposing primordial king's body exploded before he could even let out a miserable wail. The soul that had left the body looked at the 10,000 feet wide saber in horror. Just as he was about to escape, the saber slashed down again. First, it shackled the void. Then, in the blink of an eye, it directly shattered the primordial king's soul. What? What happened? The primordial king, he's dead. What's going on? The expressions of the primordial creatures nearby froze. They looked at the gap in the sky with a face full of fear, and their bodies began to tremble inexplicably. Rumble! The roar made one's heart tremble. The 10,000 feet wide saber crossed the sky and wantonly waved. Countless huge saber gleams formed by interweaving divine light swept across the sky. Wherever they passed, the void collapsed. The sound of metal mixed with the miserable wails of the primordial creatures. In less than 3 minutes, all the primordial creatures turned into piles of flesh and blood that scattered from the sky. The ancient warships that were originally intact were all turned into fragments and fell with a sizzling sound. Ever since the gap appeared, the great thunderclap temple's abbot, Alls, Anyener, Mushin, and the rest stopped chanting. When they saw the primordial king and thousands of primordial creatures die under the 10,000 feet wide saber, all of them fell into a daze. There was confusion in their daze. This change in the situation was too sudden, and they were caught off guard. They didn't even have time to think and react. A moment ago, the primordial king and primordial creatures that had invaded the western desert and wanted to kill all of them were all dead in the next moment, inexplicably dying under the 10,000 feet wide saber. It's the Buddha! It must be the Buddha showing his might! Yes, the Buddha heard our thoughts and sent down lightning punishment to punish this group of primordial creatures. Amitabha, it must be so. After the western desert monks came back to their senses, they prayed devoutly and bowed to the void. Bulsh *T. What Buddha showing his spirit? If he can really show his spirit, why didn't he take action earlier? The one who saved you is Boss Chu. Remember Boss Chu. However, just as the group of monks were chanting Buddha, Duanda's extremely furious roar exploded from the sky like rolling thunder. Hearing this, the great thunderclap temple's abbot and the rest all looked in the direction of the voice. It's Senior Brother Alan. Could it be that they are external aid that Senior Brother Alan invited? Who are they? Are they actually so powerful? That's a primordial king that even all the abbot and the glazed pagoda together couldn't deal with. The monks' gazes first landed on Senior Monk Alan, then instantly turned to Chu Bei, Duanda Yi Fan, and the rest, sizing them up. Abbot, this is Boss Chu. He's the one who killed the primordial king and the primordial being. Alan was the first to land beside the great thunderclap temple's abbot. He pointed at Chu Bei with a respectful expression. Boss Chu? This Taoist name sounds familiar. Where have I heard it before? One of the abbot's eyes was filled with confusion as he muttered softly. At this moment, the great thunderclap temple's abbot had already arrived in front of Chu Bei. He put his palms together and bowed sincerely. Thank you, Boss Chu, for saving our lives. You're the savior of the Western Desert. All the monks of the Western Desert will never forget your kindness today. Amitabha. Is he Boss Chu? Was the one who killed the primordial king and the primordial being's 10,000-foot wide saber the one he used? What's his background? Is he more powerful than Buddha? Maybe he's an emperor of old. In an instant, the rescued monks of the Western Desert all discussed their savior, Boss Chu. All of them were guessing his identity. Get up. I can be considered to have a relationship with the Buddha. Since I'm here, I might as well help him. Chu Bei lifted the great thunderclap temple's abbot up. His expression was still that of an expert. Boss Chu, the southern mountains is also in danger. I'm afraid their current situation isn't better than ours. Monk Ainen twirled the Buddha beads in his hand and bowed to Chu Bei. Boss Chu, you care about the world and are compassionate. Northern Plains is also being invaded by the primordial being and is in danger. Ah So bowed respectfully to Chu Bei. Boss Chu, although Zhongzhou is in a better situation than us, they're still at a disadvantage. It's only a matter of time before they lose. Ah Wu also took a step forward and gave a brief description of the situation in Zhongzhou. Then let's all make a trip. As soon as his indifferent voice fell, Chu Bei waved his sleeve. A red light flashed past. Other than the original group of people, he also brought along some of the abbot and disappeared. Chapter 310. Kaboom! In the Southern Mountain Range battlefield, just as the clan leader of the Southern Mountain Range demons, the Hall Master of the War God Hall, and the clan leader of the barbarian race were about to give up their feudal struggle with unwillingness, an earth-shattering thunder rumbled in the sky. Then, under their despairing gazes, a 10,000-foot-long divine bow appeared in the sky. Lightning was the bow, and the power of thunder was the arrow. Swoosh! The first arrow pierced the primordial king's body. The second arrow exploded the primordial king's soul. All of this happened in the blink of an eye. It was so fast that the primordial king couldn't even react before he was killed by the divine bow. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh! Before the primordial king could recover from his shock, the divine bow shot out hundreds and thousands of lightning arrows. Boom, boom, boom! Thousands of arrows tore through the void. In an instant, countless primordial kings were pierced and exploded by the arrows. Some of the primordial kings were turned into a pile of meat paste before they could even scream. The warship exploded, and countless tiles flew everywhere. The friction with the air created a continuous ear-piercing sound. Are we saved? The South Mountain Demon Tribe leader, Combat God Temple leader, Barbarian Tribe leader, and the other demons and cultivators all looked at the sky in a daze. This scene left them somewhat dumbfounded. A ray of hope appeared in a hopeless situation. Look, someone appeared! Could it be that they saved us? That's the abbot of the Western Desert's Great Thunderclap Temple. Who are those people beside him? Boss Chu. So it was him. Amid the commotion, two powerful roars revealed Chu Bei's origins. They were the Peacock King and the Green Dragon King, who were on par with the powerful human cultivators. He's the mysterious human cultivator you mentioned to me before who survived from the Antiquity Age? The demon tribe leader asked the Peacock King. Tribe leader, it's him. I just didn't expect him to appear at this time. The Peacock King was overjoyed. The other party's appearance had resolved the crisis of the South Mountain Range. Thank you, Boss Chu, for saving us. In the future, if you need anything from the demon tribe, please let us know. The barbarian tribe leader and the demon tribe leader bowed to Chu Bei at the same time. So the person who saved us is Boss Chu. Have any of you heard of him before? I know a little. I got the news from the Green Dragon King. Stop dawdling, tell us about him. I don't know of him. While the demon tribe leader, a demon tribe barbarian tribe leader, barbarian tribe leader, and barbarian tribe leader, barbarian tribe. Terrifying God tribe leader. Why are you here? Yi Fan was overjoyed when he saw who it was. He went up and gave him a big bear hug. Sigh, it's a pity that I can't leave the southern mountains for now. Otherwise, I would definitely have a good chat with you. God. God. To his God King. God. He had seen the tricks of the God tribe leader, and knew that he was powerful. However, he did not expect him to be this powerful. It would not be an exaggeration to say that he was the most powerful person in this world. After resolving the crisis of the South Mountain Range, Chu Bei led the group to the northern plains. In less than a minute, the noisy battlefield fell silent. Only the sound of the northern plains cultivators gasping could be heard. Be it the clan leader of the Wang clan, the ancient giant tribe leader, or the giant tribe leader, they all stared at Chu Bei in shock. Their faces were filled with disbelief. The mysterious person who had survived the primordial era had turned the tide of the battle in a few breaths. He had even killed the primordial king and all the other primordial creatures. He was extremely powerful. Senior, may I ask who you are? The ancient giant tribe leader gulped and asked nervously. You can call me Boss Chu. Chu Bei's calm voice echoed in the air. What? You're Boss Chu? No wonder. The head of the Wang family obviously had some understanding of Mr. Chu's deeds. Suddenly, he had a look of enlightenment on his face, as if the clouds and mist had cleared to reveal the blue sky. Rumble! At this moment, two extremely terrifying auras came from the sky in the south. The aura seemed to come from tens of thousands of kilometers away. Even so, under the aura, the divine power of the Almighties and even the divine kings were completely suppressed. They all felt suffocated. Even someone as powerful as Chu Bei could not help but frown when he felt the destructive aura. That's the direction of Zhongzhou. Jiang Taishu's lips moved slightly as he uttered 7 syllables. So he had no choice but to come out. Chu Bei stared in the direction of Zhongzhou and muttered to himself. Boss, what are you talking about? Ji Ziyue stared at Chu Bei in confusion. A being from 9,000 years ago, Chu Bei said calmly. 9,000 years ago? Who's that? Jiang Taishu, the abbot, and the rest looked at each other. You'll know when you get there. Chu Bei's voice was calm. Longzhou. Above the boundless land and in the sky, a vast expanse of light flickered. Countless powerful attacks tore the void apart. There were broken pieces of space everywhere. For extremities, dragon transformation, half-mighty figures, and even the divine kings who had come out of seclusion were fighting. The battle had reached its climax. Countless attacks had sunk regions of Zhongzhou. Bloody corpses could be seen everywhere in the forest, lake, and grassland. The pungent smell of blood in the air was nauseating. However, such an intense and vast battlefield had suddenly quieted down a moment ago, when the emperors of the 4 empires worked together to activate the great ancient formation. Whether it was the human cultivators or the ancient creatures, they seemed to have reached an agreement. They stopped their attacks and looked at the primeval formation that had been activated. Under everyone's gaze, the primeval formation that was activated by the 4 emperors flew into the sky. As it released flashing runes, it became bigger and bigger. Buzz, 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 the great Tao roared. The sky above the primeval formation suddenly cracked open. Thousands of beams of divine light fell from the sky as if they were going to envelop Zhongzhou, or the entire Big Dipper. Looking at the crack, all the cultivators in Zhongzhou were shocked. Their mouths were wide open, and their faces were full of shock. No one knew how big the crack was. However, everyone in every corner of Zhongzhou could see the crack when they looked up. It was so big that no words could describe it. What made them lose their minds was that it was not just a pitch-black crack. Instead, it was a boundless starry sky. Bright stars poured down. It was so bright that it seemed like it was going to destroy the universe. Poof! Suddenly, a strand of violet light flashed down from the boundless starry sky, and it silently flashed past the chest and abdomen of a primeval being before instantly slashing it into 2, causing fresh blood to spray over 100 m into the sky. Ah! The terrifying creature whose strength was second only to the primeval king screamed in pain. Blood rained down from the sky. The primeval spirit lit up. It tried its best to tear open the void and escape. However, the beam of purple light that had yet to dissipate was all-pervasive and could seal the void. The primeval spirit could not escape at all. With a whoosh, the primeval spirit dissipated quickly. Primeval King, Lord Ruasi, how did he die? Looking at the place where the primeval spirit died, the group of primeval spirits were terrified. They looked at the primeval king in unison. What did you do? The primeval king with thick golden hair and a pair of golden ancestral dragon horns did not care about his subordinates. Instead, he pointed at the boundless starry sky in the distance, and questioned the 4 emperors at the same time. His expression turned solemn. The powerful aura in the boundless starry sky made every inch of flesh and blood tremble uncontrollably. Even someone as powerful as the primeval king had an inexplicable urge to kneel down and worship. He had only felt this kind of aura from the primeval king. Could it be that you humans still have such a taboo existence in this world? The primeval king looked at the boundless starry sky in the distance, and trembled slightly. The 4 emperors of Great Xia, Guhua, Jiuli, and Divine Prefecture did not answer the primeval king's question. They were sincerely kneeling down and worshipping the boundless starry sky. They did not know what kind of terrifying existence would be summoned. This was just an ancient formation passed down from generation to generation of emperors. When the emperors of the 4 dynasties activated this ancient formation at the same time according to the secret method, a guardian of the human race would descend. It was strictly stated in the imperial records that even the emperors of their generation had to kneel down and worship the guardian of the human race. Seeing the 4 emperors kneel down, The cultivators who did not know what was going on also knelt down and looked at the boundless starry sky in the gap in confusion. Buzz, buzz, buzz! Suddenly, the boundless starry sky trembled. A faint celestial sound rang out. It was like a song and sobbing, shaking the heavens. An old man appeared at the end of the star domain. His body was in decline, and his eyes were dim. He carried a kind of sadness, as he walked over step by step and appeared in the vision of the cultivators and the primeval king. At first glance, he seemed to be hanging above everyone's heads. However, if one looked closely, they would realize that he seemed to be in a distant star domain, tens of millions of kilometers away. Is this the Lord Guardian? Looking at the old man in the star domain, the four emperors murmured with surprise between their brows. Is the human race in danger? In the star domain, the old man in his twilight years had a sickly look on his face. His voice was calm and emotionless. Lord Guardian, the primeval king has revived and is invading our human race's territory. I'm afraid the entire Big Dipper is in danger now. The Guhua Emperor immediately said loudly with respect. The primeval king has invaded. As the old man's incomparably aged voice fell, his body surged with majestic and gorgeous light. This gorgeous light seemed to instantly envelop the entire Big Dipper. Chapter 3:11. Eastern Wilderness, Southern Ridge, Northern Plains, and Western Deserts crisis has been resolved. Only the middle ground is left. I didn't expect such an existence to appear in this era where spirit chi is so weak. How rare. The old man shook his head and looked in the direction of the northern plains with a faint sigh. The crisis of the other four regions has been resolved? This? How could this be? Hearing the old man's words, the four emperors of the empires looked at each other in confusion. Impossible! Logically speaking, the other four regions should have been occupied by the primordial race. The primordial being with the dragon horn had a look of disbelief. This is no longer your era. You shouldn't have appeared. The old man looked at the countless corpses below and sighed again. He stood in the starry sky. Although he didn't do anything, the winds and clouds changed wherever his gaze landed. Two beams of light shot out from his eyes like falling stars. They pierced through the void and shone with eternal immortal radiance. Rumble! The primordial beings in the middle ground all exploded on the spot. Blood splattered and dyed the sky red. They didn't even make a sound before their bodies and souls turned into ashes. Seeing this scene, the other primordial beings, including the primordial king, shuddered. Fear filled their eyes. What kind of person was this old man? Just one look was enough to destroy all their clansmen in the void. There was no lack of god kings among them. The old man didn't say anything. He just turned to look at another region where the primordial beings were densely gathered. With a bang, thousands of primordial beings turned into pools of blood. Their bodies and souls were destroyed. No! No! The primordial king's expression changed completely. His body trembled violently. Quick! Quickly invite the primordial king to appear! The primordial king's voice was trembling. He looked at the old man with eyes full of fear. The other party's aura made him shudder. As the primordial king's fearful voice fell, all the primordial beings, led by the primordial king, closed their eyes at the same time and prayed sincerely. Ma 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 ba ba! Mimiluya! An ancient primordial language reverberated in the sky above the middle ground. Countless strange runes that were difficult to understand appeared out of thin air and gradually gathered together. What are these primordial beings doing? Could it be that they are also summoning the guardians of their race? Look, there's another person coming out! Right when all the human cultivators were discussing, an enormous rumble resounded, and a terrifying aura erupted from the star region where the old man was in the distant sky. Following that, a man with golden fur all over his body appeared in everyone's line of sight. He was sitting on a stone beast, and one of his hooves had actually crushed a star. This was a terrifying ancient emperor. When the golden-furred creature stopped moving, a boundless emperor chi erupted and swept across the world. The stars in the starfield shook violently, as if they were about to collapse at any moment. "What is it?" The golden-haired man's eyes were deep and unfathomable, as if they were condensed from the ocean. Upon closer inspection, one could see that the universe and galaxies were destroyed, the heavens had collapsed, the world had been created, and all living beings had been born. His cold gaze shot through the sky, and it seemed as if it could pierce through a myriad of kilometers of space. His voice was like a thunderclap that shook the boundless sky to the point it trembled. "Honorable Emperor, we shouldn't have disturbed your slumber. However, our race is in trouble now, and we are unable to deal with it alone." The primordial emperor knelt before the golden-haired man and pointed at the old man at the same time. "You don't have much time left." The primordial emperor's gaze landed on the old man, and he was extremely calm. "I can still fight." The old man no longer looked sickly and looked straight at the primordial emperor. In the distant sky, two figures stood opposite each other in the endless starfield. For a moment, they actually fell into silence. Rumble! At that moment, a loud rumble broke the dead silence. A divine light flashed, and several figures appeared beside the four emperors. They were Chu Bei Yifan Duanda, the abbot of the Great Thunderclap Temple, the leader of the Southern Ridge Demon Tribe, and the others. "Has the crisis of the Eastern Wilderness, Western Desert, Southern Ridge, and Northern Plains really been resolved?" The four emperors of the Divine Region and 9 Li tribes glanced at the abbot of the Great Thunderclap Temple and the others. "This is all thanks to Boss Chu." The abbot of the Great Thunderclap Temple put his palms together and said Amitabha. "Boss Chu? So it's you!" Hearing that, the four emperors looked at each other and said with some surprise. Obviously, they knew Boss Chu and the others. "Who are those two?" The leader of the Southern Ridge Demon Tribe pointed at the two people standing opposite each other in the distant starfield with shock and confusion between his brows. "That golden-haired man is the primordial emperor who was invited by the primordial creatures. That old man is the guardian of the human race. As for his background, there's no way to know." The emperor of the Divine Region briefly explained. "The guardian of the human race?" Hearing that, Jiang Taishu was shocked. "So the rumors are true. There really is such an existence that has been protecting the human race all this time. Boss, you should know who he is, right?" Yifan looked at Chu Bei and asked curiously. Beside him, Ji Ziyue also widened her eyes and looked at Chu Bei with anticipation. "Gai Jiuyo." Chu Bei's lips moved slightly and said 3 calm syllables. Although his voice was not loud, to the ears of the Emperor of the Divine Region, the Emperor of the 9 Li tribe, the Abbot of the Tempest Temple, the Temple Master of the War God Temple, Duanda, and the others, it was no different from a bolt from the blue. It wasn't because Chu Bei's voice was mixed with a terrifying strength, but because the name itself was enough to shock people. Whether it was the ancient sacred ground, the clan of the ancients, or the ancient books of the imperial dynasty, there were records of this name. This name had once shocked an era and was one of the people who were closest to becoming a great emperor. Gai Jiuyo was one of the most outstanding people since ancient times. His talent was recognized by the world. If the Qing emperor had not achieved the Tao before him, the two of them would have been too close and he would have become another great emperor. Such an outstanding person had entered the quasi-emperor realm in the shortest time possible, and then sublimated to the extreme. He had already touched that supreme realm, but he could not achieve the final transformation. After the Antiquity era, the world had changed greatly and everything was so difficult. Especially when the Qing Emperor's Tao had not disappeared, he was still able to reach that step and almost broke the ancient shackles, rewrite history, write miracles, and truly achieve the Tao. This could no longer be described as just amazing. However, it was a pity that such a peerless talent was born in the wrong era and could not break through the shackles of the world and step into the true great emperor realm. In the evaluation of the books of later generations, his life was the most regrettable. Didn't they say that he had already passed away? Could the rumors be false? The South Mountain Demon Tribe leader's eyes were filled with curiosity. Sometimes, rumors are not necessarily true. However, although he forced himself to live to this era, he is already an arrow at the end of its flight. Chubei said indifferently with his hands behind his back. In this era where spiritual chi is weak, you can still enter this realm. The younger generation will surpass us in time. It's a pity that you were born in the wrong era like me. Otherwise, you would have been a great emperor. Suddenly, the old man in the distant firmament star domain turned his head to look in Chubei's direction and sighed throughout the Big Dipper star domain. You just entered this realm, but you are just an ant. The primordial emperor glanced at Chubei with disdain in his eyes. Old bastard, compared to Boss Chu, you are the ant. Hearing the primordial emperor's words, Duande replied loudly. Die! The primordial emperor's expression changed slightly, and a beam of cold light instantly pierced through the void and shot toward Duande. Boom! Seeing that the cold light containing the terrifying Tao was about to destroy Duande, Chubei's eyes also shot out a cold light, bringing about an earth-shattering boom. There is not much time, let's fight. In the star domain, the old man in his twilight years looked at the primordial emperor. As his aged voice fell, a leisurely melody sounded. The ethereal celestial music was melodious as if it flowed from ancient times and resonated with the Tao. The star domain was filled with an inexplicable charm. In the starry sky, Gai Jiuyo was dressed in white. His eyes became clear and his hair fluttered, like a god patrolling the world. He was clearly standing on the other side of the starry sky, but he gave people the illusion that he was standing very close. However, if one looked carefully, they would feel that he was incomparably ethereal and difficult to capture. It was as if his body had merged with the starry sky and was everywhere. Is this the 9 nether celestial song recorded in the ancient books? The moment the celestial music sounded, everyone's eyes were focused on Gai Jiuyo, whether it was the human cultivators or the primordial creatures. When the sky emits killing intent, the stars shift. When the earth emits killing intent, dragons and snakes rise. When the man emits killing intent, the world turns upside down. As expected of the terrifying Tao music that exists side by side with the overture of gods. The abbot of the great Thunderclap Temple exclaimed. When the 9 nether celestial songs sounded, it was hidden with endless killing intent, as if it was going to collapse the world. Interesting. If I were as old and weak as you, I wouldn't come out even if my clan was annihilated. The primordial emperor let out a burst of laughter. I didn't expect you to take the initiative to attack me. How laughable. As soon as the primordial emperor's sarcastic words fell, the starry sky suddenly burst into ghostly wails and howls. One moment, it was raining blood, and the next moment, divine flowers bloomed. Sparkling and translucent petals danced in the bloody light, which was extremely strange. Boom! As the 9 nether celestial songs sounded, Gai Jiuyo stood in the void. His originally turbid eyes suddenly shot out 2 beams of light. Then, a hand crossed several stars, stretched out, and slapped directly at the primordial emperor from the starry sky. It's too terrifying! Where is their battlefield? Looking at the giant palm that was as big as a star, the divine prefecture emperor, Jiang Taishu, the abbot of the great Thunderclap Temple, and the others were full of astonishment. Duande, Jizue, and the others also couldn't help but open their mouths wide. The most powerful technique they had seen before was from Chubei, but now, compared with the 2 existences in the sky that seemed to be located in the starry sky, it seemed to pale in comparison. Gai Jiuyo is indeed the man who is closest to becoming a great emperor in the past 10,000 years. The 9ly emperor took a deep breath. Such people could pluck the stars with their hands and step on the Milky Way with their feet. It seemed that as long as they wanted to, they could sink the central plains and make it disappear from the Big Dipper starry sky. Chapter 312. You don't have enough blood chi to fight with me. You will die in this battle. Primordial Emperor spoke in a calm voice that was filled with supreme majesty, shocking everyone's heart. Primordial Emperor also attacked. He rode the stone beast to meet Gai Jiuyo's attack. The stone beast stomped and a star exploded. In the starry sky, the 2 terrifying attacks intertwined. Perhaps it was because the star field was too far away, or perhaps it was because the two forces had collided, but regardless of whether it was the cultivators or the ancient creatures, none of them heard the earth-shattering explosion that they had expected. In the distant sky, everything that happened in the star zone was more like a silent image to them. The two supreme existences, Gai Jiuyo and Primordial Emperor, had their palms collided. The two of them floated in the starry sky and faced each other quietly. Their palms seemed to be touching each other peacefully, but their palms were filled with the demonic light of the Great Path. Wherever the light passed, the stars around them would explode one after another without a sound. The confrontation between the two of them lasted for 15 minutes. Finally, a sigh broke the dead silence in the image. Gai Jiuyo took a few steps back and spat out golden blood. The blood fell on the stars, and the energy contained in it crushed the stars. You can die by yourself. Primordial Emperor didn't attack immediately. Instead, he looked at Gai Jiuyo and shook his head. Is their battle over? Isn't Lord Guardian a match for Primordial Emperor? Seeing Gai Jiuyo coughing up blood, Emperor Jiuli and the others looked terrible. Gai Jiuyo was their last hope. If even Gai Jiuyo couldn't defeat Primordial Emperor, the entire Big Dipper would probably change hands. Today would be the day that the human clan would perish. Lord Primordial Emperor is mighty! Primordial Emperor and the primordial creatures shouted. Boss, the battle between them just now, the battle isn't over yet. Keep watching. Yifan looked at Chu Bei, but before he could finish his words, Chu Bei smiled and waved his hand to interrupt him. Chu Bei pointed at the star zone in the sky and motioned for him to continue watching. This era doesn't belong to us anymore. I'm lonely on the road. I need you to accompany me. In the star field, Gai Jiuyo wiped the golden blood from the corner of his mouth. The 9 Serenities celestial song sounded again. His calm words carried a hint of a smile. Step by step, he walked towards the archaic emperor. His entire body was glowing and gradually calming down. With every step he took, the star domain trembled, and the light on his body grew brighter and brighter. During this process, his withered body began to emit a buzzing sound, like the sound of an emperor. In the end, one could vaguely see the blood flowing in his body, and the sound of it flowing could be heard clearly. It was like a surging river, like a raging sea splitting the sky. As soon as Gai Jiuyo finished speaking, he seemed to have undergone a shocking change. With every step he took, it was as if he was walking against the river of time for 100 years. His body was becoming younger, and filled with vitality. Why did the Lord Guardian suddenly? The 4 emperors stared intently at the sky. When they saw Gai Jiuyo turn from an old man to a young man and from white hair to black hair, they were filled with disbelief. Ancestor, why do I feel like crying? Ji Ziyue leaned against Chu Bei and pouted. Her eyes were blurred and filled with tears. For the human race, he's risking his last light of life. Chu Bei let out a long breath and looked at Gai Jiuyo in the starry sky. A sense of melancholy and respect welled up in his heart. What? His last light of life! Hearing Chu Bei's words, the 4 emperors, the Tempest Temple's abbot, Jiang Taishu, and the rest were shocked. Boss, why don't you go and stop him? Yifan asked. Chu Bei shook his head. Since he was awakened, the outcome has been decided. It's only a matter of time before it ends. This battle might be what he wants, regardless of whether he wins or loses. No wonder our ancestors said that we can only awaken the Lord Guardian once. So that's why. The 4 emperors seemed to have thought of something. They looked at each other and were in a daze. Ancestor, you have a heaven-defying method to revive Kai Yun. I wonder if you can help Lord Gai Jiuyo. Jiang Taishi tried to ask. However, before he could finish, he saw Chu Bei shaking his head. At this level, even I can't do anything in a short period of time. Hearing that, everyone looked at Gai Jiuyo in the starry sky again, and they were in awe. In order to protect the human race, this old man had held on until this era. In order to protect the human race, in his last moments, he forcefully refined his essence, and restored himself to his peak state in the past. he was going to fight with the Taiga Emperor. As a result, he would be reduced to dust in an hour, or even a quarter of an hour. His body and soul would be destroyed and he would cease to exist forever. He was already old. In order to fight, he refined his blood essence and condensed his time. He wanted to restore himself to his peak state when he was about to break through to the great Emperor realm. Everything he did was to protect the human race. Let's fight again. In the starry sky, Gaijuyo looked at the Taiga Emperor and said calmly. There was no anger or sadness in his voice. There was only a kind of fighting spirit in his voice, and there was a shocking radiance on his face. As soon as he said that, a few more stars behind Gaijuyo exploded. If he had just passed away, he might have a good reincarnation. But now, he has sublimated to the extreme. I'm afraid he will really die. The Taiga Emperor looked at Gaijuyo with pity in his eyes. Is it worth it? I'll drag you down with me. Gaijuyo spoke again, and the stars in the sky were all trembling. The Juyo immortal song resounded through the starry sky. His body became younger, and radiance covered his body. Step by step, he walked toward the Taiga Emperor. His dim eyes were filled with shocking radiance. In the end, his blood essence soared and his entire body was full of vitality. He was majestic and transcendent. Is this Gaijuyo at his peak? Looking at the majestic figure in the starry sky, Duanda was in a daze. At this moment, Gaijuyo had an unparalleled heroic appearance. His eyes were bright, and his thick black hair was draped over his shoulders and back. He looked like a reincarnated immortal king and gave people a sense of transcendence and power. He was a strange man with a heavenly appearance. He was as handsome as jade and had a kind of unparalleled power. As he stood there, his unique aura suppressed the sky. He alone could suppress the universe and surpass the gods. This was the young Gaijuyo, who reigned supreme in the starry sky and was unparalleled in the world. Boss, can he take the Taiga Emperor away? Yifan felt sour and couldn't help but ask Chubei. He could feel Gaijuyo's desire and persistence. He wanted to take the Taiga Emperor away even if he had to fight to the death. It's difficult. Chubei shook his head and spat out a word. I'll fulfill your last wish. The Taiga Emperor's aura devoured the mountains and rivers. A supreme aura gushed out of his body, and the stone beast beneath him roared and shattered millions of stars. In the starry sky, the battle between the two quasi-emperors broke out. Like before, the battle was silent, but the scene was extremely shocking. This was a battle between emperors. They fought their way into the depths of the starry sky and crossed many star domains. Wherever they passed, stars exploded one after another. In the endless starry sky, they unleashed a dazzling brilliance of Emperor Dao. This battle lasted for 2 hours. In the end, Gaijuyo was the first to stop and hovered above a star. The Taiga Emperor also stopped attacking and hovered above a star, quietly looking at Gaijuyo. We can't go against heaven's will. An unwilling sigh drifted in the starry sky. Gaijuyo's body began to emit the light of the great Tao. His black hair turned black at a speed visible to the naked eye, and his youthful appearance changed again. His qi and blood, which was originally as vigorous as the ocean, also declined and his vitality seemed to be slowly draining away. He didn't lose this battle, but because of his extreme sublimation, his vitality eventually faded away. During this period, he didn't defeat the Taiga Emperor and was always in a similar state to Jiaozhua. Who won this battle? It seems that the Guardian has lost. His time is up. No, if that's the case, then our doomsday is here. Haha, the Taiga Emperor has won. Let's see what else these humans can rely on. Kill them all. Looking at the scene in the starry sky, the human race cultivators were in despair. Their faces were filled with unwillingness, as if they had seen their own endings. As for the Taiga King and the Taiga creatures, they were the opposite. They were all excited and looked at the human race cultivators with bloodthirsty eyes. I can't accompany you. Let your human race companions accompany you on this journey. The Taiga Emperor shifted his gaze and looked at the cultivators of middle ground. Gai Jiuyo looked dejected and didn't say anything. He just sighed continuously. There was nothing he could do now. In the starry sky, the Taiga Emperor stretched out his finger and pointed at the Big Dipper. Boss Chu, please help us. Jiang Taishu, the eminent monk, the Green Dragon King, and the others looked at Chu Bei at the same time with pleading eyes. Even the guardian Gai Jiuyo was no match for the Taiga Emperor. At this time, the last straw they could think of was the mysterious Boss Chu beside them. Looking at Jiang Taishu and the others, Chu Bei frowned and remained silent. Because of the system, he could ignore the Taiga Emperor's attack. However, it was almost impossible for him to protect the others from the Taiga Emperor. Although the system had given him the power of a quasi-emperor, it was only equivalent to a rank 1 quasi-emperor. On the other hand, the Taiga Emperor was half a step into the true Great Emperor realm. Since the enemy is more powerful than the host and fulfills the conditions to mobilize Xiao Hei's power, the host can borrow part of Xiao Hei's power for 2 hours. Just as Chu Bei was about to use the level 16 commodity and choose the strongest killing commodity to fight the Taiga Emperor, the system's voice sounded. Xiao Hei's power? Hearing that, Chu Bei was stunned. He remembered the system's notification when he left the Doloa continent plane. At a specific time, he could borrow Xiao Hei's power. Obviously, the system's assessment was that this was the specific time. After coming back to his senses, Chu Bei's divine thought moved. Buzz, there was a buzzing sound. A large amount of hazy chaotic fog suddenly surged out in front of Chu Bei. In the chaos, a 2-meter-tall humanoid iron lump robot appeared. Boss, this is? Under the confused gazes of Yifan, Ji Ziyue, and the others, the humanoid iron lump robot slowly sank into Chu Bei's body and fused with him. The Guardian has been defeated. Is the human race really going to die? At the same time, the group of cultivators saw the Taiga Emperor in the firmament star field pointing at them. Their hearts instantly sank, and a chill inexplicably lit up their backs. At this moment, the spirit energy in their bodies was imprisoned. Their breathing became rapid, and their black hair quickly turned white. They could not move, but they could sense that the life force in their bodies was disappearing at a terrifying speed. However, just as they were about to lose consciousness, a thunderous sound rang out in their minds. This thunderous sound was like the descent of the heavens, like the dawn in the darkness, and also like the Savior. The moment it rang out, everything returned to normal. They regained their freedom once again. Their white hair returned to black hair, and their breathing became even. Not only did their rapidly declining life force recover to its original state, it even seemed to be slightly replenished. From the disappearance of life force to the recovery of life force, all of this happened in a flash. However, the cultivators who experienced it personally felt as if they had fallen into a reincarnation cycle. What's going on? Shouldn't we be dead? Could it be that the Guardian hasn't lost yet? He protected us. No, look! There's another figure in that star field. Who is he? Could it be that there's only one Guardian of the human race? If that's the case, doesn't that mean we humans haven't lost yet? The group of cultivators recovered from their joy. When they looked up at the star field in the distant sky again, they were all dumbfounded. It was as if they had lost their minds, and their bodies were numb. Chapter 313. In the endless starry sky, a figure appeared beside Gai Jiuyo. However, as his entire body was wrapped in chaos, it was impossible to see his appearance clearly. With the appearance of this figure, the faces of the Primordial King and the other primordial creatures turned ugly. Boss, it's the boss! He has made a move, it's him! Ji Ziyue shouted excitedly. Why do I feel that the boss's aura has changed? Duanda muttered. As expected of the person who discussed the great path with our ancestors. He can even join the battlefield of a quasi-emperor. The head of the Jiang family muttered to himself as he looked at the divine radiance in the starry sky. Didn't the Guardian say that he had just become a quasi-emperor? Why do I feel that he is stronger than the Guardian? After the shock, the 4 emperors looked at each other and smiled. If this was true, they would see the light of hope again in their despair. Yi Fan remained silent, but when he looked at the figure in the sky, he subconsciously clenched his fists, and his gaze became more determined. No! Impossible! You, how could you? In the starry sky, Gai Jiuyo's expression changed. Even when the previous battle had ended, his emotions had not fluctuated as much as now. In the forbidden land of the remote antiquity, one of the 7 life forbidden zones. In the forbidden land, the sound of iron chains shook the sky. At first, the sound spread hundreds of miles, then thousands of miles, and finally tens of thousands of miles until all the creatures in the entire area prostrated themselves in worship. A figure flew out from the abyss and stood in the void. He was firmly bound by 4 immortal chains made of divine gold, and he was struggling hard. The 9 sacred mountains were about to leave the ground and uproot him. With a low roar, the void above the forbidden land of the remote antiquity collapsed inch by inch, and the vast sky was blasted into chaos. This was the original master of the forbidden land of the remote antiquity, a great success, Saint Physique. You're awake! On another sacred mountain, a slender figure stood in the clouds, and her hair fluttered in the wind. The moment she looked back, it seemed like thousands of years had passed. The great path of heaven and earth was trembling and collapsing because of her. Unfortunately, this stunning gaze only lasted for a moment before it turned into indifference. Thank you for taking care of me all these years. The great success Saint Physique looked at the woman and said with gratitude. Then, he pointed at the starry sky above and asked, Who is he? I don't know. The woman glanced at the lightning in the firmament star area and shook her head. One of the 7 life-restricted zones, Grand Primordium Ancient Mine. The reddish-brown earth seemed to have been dyed red by blood, cold, and desolate. Desolation and emptiness coexisted. There were a few huge rocks scattered on the ground. At first glance, they looked like tombstones. The world was dark and gloomy, and the faint black fog added a sense of eeriness to this world. The boundless reddish-brown land was distant and deathly still. There were no signs of life at all. Him again! No, he's even stronger! Who is he? The ancient emperor of the human race before the primordial age? Or the primordial human race emperor? Every great emperor was a unique existence in that era. Why is there no record of him? Could it be that he's ahead of us? Perhaps there was already a gap in his era and no one knows. Is there any lack of dark unrest? Deep, indistinct sounds came from the Primordium Ancient Mine. Several gazes pierced through the heavens towards that figure in the firmament star domain. One of the 7 life-restricted zones, the Reincarnation Sea. Whoosh, silver waves rolled up like a metal storm. The surface of the sea seemed to have been cut in half by a giant sword. Then, the ancient great emperor's aura overflowed and cut through the 3 realms and 6 paths, cutting through the past, present, and future. An imposing figure appeared on the surface of the sea. A pair of cold eyes looked at the starry sky. Time seemed to be in chaos at this moment. One of the 7 life-restricted zones, the Immortal Mausoleum. The ancient silence was broken, and the prehistoric stone tablets shook violently. A huge black shadow slowly appeared under a huge tablet king. What are you trying to do? Why did you awaken in this era? The huge black shadow didn't seem to care about the primordial emperor and Gai Jiuyo. Its eyes were fixed on the figure wrapped in lightning. With a cold snort, hundreds of primordial stone tablets rose from the ground and emitted a dazzling light. They were like scorching suns, releasing a monstrous aura. One of the 7 life-restricted zones, the ruins of God. The human race and the primordial royal race. Another dark unrest. Who will quell this unrest? Boom! With a sigh, a terrifying figure at the bottom of the divine spring opened his eyes. He had 9 pupils, and the light from his pupils pierced through several stars in the distant firmament. One of the 7 life-restricted zones, Burial Island. On a floating island, a huge black shadow was wandering around. The moment the divine light appeared in the star field, the shadow's slightly dazed eyes became somewhat clear. Who is the ancient great emperor? the black shadow muttered. When he took a step forward, mountains collapsed and seas dried up. In the blink of an eye, the world changed. One of the 7 life-restricted zones, the Undying Mountain. Every mountain was black. Some were like swords that towered into the clouds, and some were like bulls lying on the ground. They were surrounded by mist and majestic. "Do you still want to fight with him?" The person who spoke was an old man. He held the black tortoise in his hand and pointed at the figure in the starry sky. "If he doesn't come, then forget it. If he comes, then let's fight to the death." A tall and majestic demonic figure holding a black halberd narrowed his eyes. His cold pupils shot a sharp light into the firmament of the starry sky. Since the figure wrapped in divine light appeared in the starry sky, the terrifying supreme beings of the 7 life-restricted zones woke up one after another. Their auras were monstrous. With a boom, the dazzling divine light around the figure gradually dissipated. Chubei stood on a star with his hands behind his back. His robes fluttered without wind, and his hair fluttered slightly. His indifferent gaze seemed to have pierced through thousands of starry sky and landed on the land of the Middle Continent. Even the powerful primordial king and the 4 emperors of the Middle Continent could not help but tremble under this gaze. In the starry sky, countless stars surged with majestic life chi amidst the lightning. This life chi turned into small rivers, sparkling and translucent, that crossed the starry sky and flowed into Chubei's body. Great Emperor! But your aura just now, you clearly just entered the quasi-emperor realm. Gai Juyo's bodily functions were deteriorating and the power of time began to slowly erode him. He looked at Chubei in astonishment. He had lived for nearly 10,000 years, and at his peak, he was almost half a step into the great emperor realm. On the path of cultivation, he looked down on all heroes. If he had not been born in the wrong era, he was confident that he would have become a great emperor. He had cultivated to the extreme of every realm, but even so, he still could not understand how the existence in front of him could step into a realm that even he had not reached. Moreover, it was in this era where spiritual chi was weak. When you are above heaven and earth, even heaven can be bullied, let alone you. Sometimes, the perception of divine sense is not real. As his calm voice fell, Chubei glanced at Gai Juyo indifferently, and his gaze seemed to have returned to the battlefield of the Middle Continent. In an instant, the primordial king and the other creatures on the battlefield of the Middle Continent felt a chill in their hearts. A chill ran down their spines, and the life in their bodies seemed to be deprived by an invisible strange energy. What exactly did he do? Who can stop him? Our life force is fading. Who exactly is he? Why are there no records of him? The primordial creatures were terrified. Suddenly, the life force in their bodies decreased sharply, as if they had reached the end of their lives. No! Amidst their terrified cries, the bodies of the primordial creatures began to disintegrate one after another, turning into a rain of light and disappearing into the void. His eyes swirled, and the cycle of reincarnation collapsed. Chubei did not move, but just a wisp of his gaze penetrated the star domain and landed on the battlefield of the Middle Continent, and it caused such a terrifying scene. Woof woof! The large black dog suddenly barked excitedly. Boss is an ancient great emperor, a flawless great emperor. No sure void, eternal universe, devouring heaven, West Emperor, these human great emperors, who exactly are you? On the star, the primordial emperor stared at Chubei, and with a cold shout, a river of stars appeared behind him. At the same time, divine light shot out from his right hand, as if to block Chubei's power for the primordial creatures on the battlefield of the Middle Continent. Chubei looked at the primordial emperor. 5 million years ago, the world called me the Lord of Divine Punishment. 4 million years ago, the world called me the 9 Heavens Divine Emperor. 3 million years ago, the world called me the Netherworld Heavenly Emperor. 2 million years ago, the world called me the Ancestor Immortal Hongqin. 1 million years ago, the world called me Boss Chu. A calm and emotionless voice came out of Chubei's mouth. It drifted through the entire starry sky and spread out endlessly, causing countless stars to tremble. Hearing this, even the primordial emperor and Gai Jiuyo, who had lived for 10,000 years, were shocked, and their hearts trembled. The two of them looked at each other, and a dazed look appeared in their eyes, their faces filled with disbelief. The existence in front of them had lived for 5 million years. Did you hear that? Boss Chu has lived for 5 million years. The Lord of Divine Punishment, the Nine Heavens Divine Emperor, the Netherworld Heavenly Emperor, the Ancestor Immortal Hong Chen, these are all his titles. It's not that he's not famous enough, but we were born too late. The historical great emperors recorded in the ancient books can only be traced back to 300,000 years ago at most. The great emperors before the primordial era were only vaguely recorded, let alone 1 million years ago. No wonder, we know nothing about Boss Chu. But then again, why can Boss live for 5 million years, and all the previous great emperors have disappeared? Maybe they're not as powerful as the ancestor. Living for 5 million years, the day the ancestor was born, I'm afraid it can be traced back to the beginning of the chaos. After Chu Bei's voice fell, the expressions of the cultivators on the battlefield changed instantly, and they were all stunned, as if they had been struck by lightning. They couldn't believe their ears, as if they had been struck by a bolt from the blue, or as if a basin of cold water had been poured over them from head to toe. Their bodies went numb. Even the 7 life-forbidden zones emitted strange and terrifying auras, which were suffocating at this moment. Great Emperor Wu Shi was born 80,000 years ago, and he was the last great emperor of the human race. Boss is a great emperor from 5 million years ago, and I'm afraid he's the first great emperor of the human race. The Black Emperor took a deep breath and was at a loss, like a dog made of clay or wood. The ancestor was born 150,000 years ago. According to Boss, he and the ancestor knew each other, and I thought they were from the same era. Now it seems that I was wrong. Ji Ziyue's mouth fell open as she recalled the records of the Void Emperors in the family tree. 5 million years, Boss must have countless treasures in the world. No wonder he doesn't even care about the supreme weapons. Duanda sighed with envy in his eyes. So, in terms of seniority, aren't I the same as those great emperors of the primordial era? Yi Fan mumbled. There was no doubt that both the primordial era creatures and human cultivators were shocked when they heard this news. It was no different from a bolt from the blue. In the stars, Chu Bei put his hands behind his back and shook his head at the primordial era emperor. Your era has declined, and you shouldn't invade the human race. If I order them to retreat now, will you pretend that nothing happened? The primordial era emperor calmly looked at Chu Bei. No. Chu Bei was direct and efficient. 2 indifferent syllables reverberated through the starry sky. He had triggered the power of Xiaohei. If he let them go just like that, what if they came back after his time was up? Cut the weeds and eliminate the roots, leaving no future trouble. This was the safest way. Then, let's fight to the death. In the stars, the dense purple aura around the primordial era emperor boiled and rolled out, and his thunderous voice echoed among the countless stars. Let's change to a lifeless star field. As his indifferent voice fell, Chu Bei stood above the chaos and took a step forward. The stars shone brightly, and the stars moved, and heaven and earth changed. A blazing rainbow bridge crossed the universe, crossing thousands of realms, and went straight to a certain star. The divine rainbow under Chu Bei's feet was too bright, and it seemed to connect the 2 sides of the stars. Chapter 314. What's that? How can a colorful path be so long? It stretches into the depths of the universe. Is this the travel of a great emperor? What kind of realm is a great emperor in? Have they changed the battlefield? The group of cultivators stared at the distant sky. The star region within the gap had completely changed. The stars within it were dim, as if there was no life at all. In the star region, Chu Bei's vital energy was like an ocean. Chaos wrapped around his body and dazzling divine light flooded the starry sky. He was like the ruler of the starry sky patrolling. Fight! With a shout that shattered several stars, the primordial emperor made his move. His body expanded and stood in the star region like a god. His black hair was like a river of stars and his eyes were like lightning. In his Dharma form, the divine peak was magnificent and majestic. Clouds lingered and purple clouds flowed. The strange phenomenon towered in the universe, and the stars seemed incomparably small in front of it. This was a kind of lofty spirit that said, "If I can't do it, who can?" With a buzz, a treasure wheel flew out of the primordial emperor's Dharma form's big hand, shining with a cold light. The treasure wheel danced in the air with 6 worlds rotating on it. It was as if the real world had reappeared and was about to swallow Chu Bei with boundless divine power. 6 Tao worlds, universe change, suppress! The primordial emperor roared, shaking the star region in all directions. The treasure wheel was as red as blood and its aura was even more terrifying. It seemed to have frozen the entire star region and suppressed Chu Bei. His wheel was refined from the flesh and blood of a great emperor, and it contains the fist intent of the 6 paths of reincarnation. You must not touch the wheel, or you will be bewitched by the fist intent, Gai Jiuyo reminded. However, not only did Chu Bei not listen to Gai Jiuyo's warning, but he also took a step forward and directly turned into a beam of light and rushed into the blood-red treasure wheel under the latter's shocked gaze. Seeing this, the primordial emperor was stunned at first. When he came to his senses, joy and excitement surged on his face. So what if you're a great emperor? Arrogant people will die! The primordial emperor coldly snorted. Then, he quickly formed a primordial seal with both hands, absorbing the power of the surrounding stars and pouring it all into the wheel. Immediately, the precious wheel spun crazily. 6 streaks of immortal radiance shot out. Those were 6 ancient worlds, and they were connected by the power of the stars. They displayed their greatest profound mysteries. Boundless laws, boundless divine power, exterminate! The immemorial sovereign's hand slammed down on the treasured wheel like a sea of stars crashing down. Rumble! Under the guidance of the ancient sovereign's palm, the power of the starry sky inside the treasured wheel suddenly exploded. At this moment, all the spectating human cultivators and ancient creatures were blinded by the dazzling light in the starry sky. When they saw everything in the star domain again, the originally rioting treasure wheel had already calmed down. Was the Mother ** Human King suppressed by the ancient emperor? Looking at the tranquil wheel in the starry sky, the primordial monarch and the other primordial life forms had uncertain expressions. It can't be. Boss Chu is so powerful. He has lived for 5 million years. Don't worry, wait a little longer. That treasure wheel was refined from the Mother ** Human King's body. It must be an extreme weapon. An extreme weapon in the hands of a boundary emperor. Could the patriarch really be at a disadvantage? Woof woof. You fat Taoist, if you dare to spout nonsense again, I'll bite you to death. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, the starry sky became even more silent. Yi Fan, Ji Ziyue, Jiang Taishu, the 4 kings of the Central Plains, and the others all had their hearts in their throats. They all held their breaths and stared unblinkingly at the wheel that was not moving at all. The person suppressed by the treasure wheel was related to the survival of the human race. Gradually, the primordial monarch's brows on the star relaxed. When he was sure that the fluctuations in the blood-red treasure wheel had completely calmed down, he flipped his right palm and formed another primordial seal. However, just as he was about to summon the treasure wheel back, he noticed something strange. The treasure wheel refined from the Mother ** Human King's body and blood essence had lost its connection with him. The primordial monarch's pupils shrank as an ominous premonition surged in his heart. However, just as he was about to step to the treasure wheel that had calmed down suddenly lit up with a sky-blue light. Then, there was a crisp cracking sound as if it had been cut open by a sharp weapon. The treasure wheel began to spin again, but it was not under the primordial monarch's control. The force that urged it to spin came from within. Then, the 6 immortal lights that shot out from the treasure wheel suddenly dimmed as the 6 ancient worlds collapsed and exploded. After a loud rumble, with the wheel as the center, boundless divine light shot out from it. Almost instantly, the entire star region was shrouded in divine light as crackling thunderbolts filled every corner. The originally dark starry sky seemed to have turned into a boundless sea of lightning. Tens of thousands of stars were attracted by the power of thunder at the same time, and a terrifying power of stars was poured into the wheel. Boom! The treasure wheel buzzed with a deafening clang as the universe rumbled. Then, it exploded into countless fragments, and disappeared into the chaos. At the moment of the explosion, the faint sound of a soul crying could be heard in the starry sky. It was the deity of the Mother King human king's body refined by the treasure wheel. A moment later, a figure formed in the chaos and slowly walked toward the primordial monarch. "Boss, he's here. He's fine. Not only is he fine, but he also destroyed the primordial monarch's supreme weapon. I knew it. How could anything happen to Boss? He's an existence that has lived for 5 million years. Woof woof. You stinky Taoist, that's not what you said just now." Looking at the figure that walked out of the chaos, Yi Fan, Ji Ziyue, Jiang Taishu, and the others breathed a sigh of relief. Their hanging hearts seemed to be relieved. Impossible. Looking at the approaching Chu Bei, the primordial monarch instinctively retreated. Every time he took a step back, the stars on both sides behind him would explode. Roar! With a beastly roar, the stone beast under the primordial monarch opened its ferocious mouth and sucked. After swallowing a few stars, it pounced toward Chu Bei. Chu Bei glanced at the stone beast in disdain. As he took a step forward, his whole body burst out with divine light and destructive power surged. Gradually, a huge vision appeared in the sea of lightning behind Chu Bei. It was hazy. There was a heaven and earth clock, a divine ocean, a yin-yang fish, a 4-pole boat. It was emitting the light of lightning. It was not a human figure, but a blurry heaven and earth with all kinds of lightning lingering around it. Whoosh! In the vision, a bolt of lightning rushed into the sky and met the stone beast. Wherever it passed, stars collapsed one after another and turned into dust. The lightning lingered and swallowed the stone beast in an instant. A miserable shriek rang out. Countless cracks suddenly appeared on the surface of the stone beast, which originally had a monstrous aura. Then, it disintegrated and exploded into pieces amidst the lightning. Puff! Perhaps it was because the stone beast was connected to the primordial monarch's origin, but the moment the stone beast disappeared, the primordial monarch's face turned pale. His aura instantly fell, and he spat out silver-purple blood that directly crushed a part of the starry sky. Kill! The primordial monarch wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. A supreme divine law rushed out of his body and turned into a divine saber that slashed at Chu Bei. It was incomparably terrifying. That was the limit of the law. It turned into an eternal radiance that seemed to be able to destroy all forms. Too weak. The two indifferent syllables echoed in the starry sky. Chu Bei opened his mouth and let out a clear roar. The Kanei Dao light that he spat out turned into a Dao diagram that directly blocked the divine law and obliterated it between heaven and earth. Hearing Chu Bei's evaluation, the primordial monarch's face turned livid. To him, this kind of humiliation was too much, and it caused his emotions to fluctuate. So what if you're a great emperor? I still dare to fight. The primordial monarch looked at Chu Bei. His previous fear was swept away, and his entire body was like a blazing sun that soared into the sky. Then, he took out a treasure bottle, unscrewed the stopper, and poured it into his mouth. It was golden blood that soared into the sky. He drank it all in one gulp. The blood of a great emperor. Interesting. Sensing the aura in the golden blood and the primordial monarch's skyrocketing vitality, Chu Bei narrowed his eyes. Ah! The primordial monarch roared. 72 cold lights rushed out from the top of his head and pierced into the endless sea of lightning. Those were terrifying immortal sword array patterns that directly covered the sky and earth, drowning this part of the starry sky. This is the group's secret word. Seeing the immortal sword array patterns that the primordial monarch used all his strength to strike out, Gai Joyo exclaimed with surprise in his eyes. Boom! The battle broke out again. Chu Bei's body glowed, bathed in the chaos, and charged in the group's secret word array. His speed was extremely fast as he stepped on the stars. Behind him, a vision burst forth, turning into a giant that was intertwined with divine light. It advanced side by side with him, crushing the array patterns, tools, and other formations. At the same time, a broad saber appeared in his hand. Countless blue lights extended from the blade and connected to the lifeless stars. Chu Bei seemed to have transformed into the ruler of the starry sky. With the power of the stars, he was invincible. He rampaged through the array, until the starry sky collapsed and the stars exploded. The terrifying aura spread through the void and spread to the 7 life-forbidden zones. The existences in the various life-forbidden zones were all shocked. The battle continued. Chu Bei was unstoppable. In the end, he slashed several times and shattered the primordial monarch's array patterns. Then, he slashed a few more times and split the primordial monarch's body into 8 pieces. Too weak. Chu Bei stood on the stars and calmly looked at the 8 pieces of the body that had been split into 8 pieces. I'm not dead yet. The 8 pieces of the body were reassembled. The primordial monarch wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and looked at the giant standing behind Chu Bei in the starry sky. His eyes were filled with unwillingness and hatred. Chu Bei smiled and attacked again. The broad saber in his hand shone even brighter. Chapter 3:15. Kill! The primordial emperor roared again, and the phenomenon behind him merged into one as he stepped on the stars and attacked Chu Bei. If you can withstand this attack, you can leave! With a calm voice, Chu Bei raised his broadsword above his head. In an instant, the boundless chaos sea in this star domain poured into the broad saber. In an instant, the starry sky that was originally illuminated by endless light dimmed. In the eyes of the human cultivators and primordial creatures who were watching the battle, apart from Chu Bei, the primordial emperor, and Gai Joyo, there was only pitch-black darkness in the star domain. It was so dark that it was frightening. When the saber slashed down, the starry sky was split in half wherever the saber light passed. At this moment, the starry sky was dead silent. Under everyone's gaze, the saber light moved slowly in the starry sky as if it was silent. Everything seemed to have slowed down. The primordial emperor's expression was ferocious as he absorbed the power of the stars around him, and clapped his palms together. A huge palm print met the saber light. Chi! In an instant, the scene seemed to have sped up again. In the blink of an eye, the saber light split the huge palm print and continued to move forward. Then, the saber light penetrated the primordial emperor's body as he looked terrified and indignant. This time, the primordial emperor was split in half between his eyebrows by the saber light. However, his body did not heal like before. Instead, his body emitted a hazy fluorescent light and turned into a rain of light that dissipated bit by bit. The speed of his dissipation was even faster than Gai Joyo's. Is this the difference between a great emperor and a quasi-emperor? The primordial emperor's life fluctuations were getting weaker and weaker, and he looked at Chu Bei with a gaze full of indignation. Chu Bei glanced at the primordial emperor, shook his head, and ignored him. Instead, his gaze fell on Jiang Taishu, who was also dissipating, and a strange feeling inexplicably surged in his heart. Gai Joyo was an outstanding talent who had instinctively become an emperor. However, he was born in the wrong era. If the Azure Emperor was still alive, he would have challenged him back then. Gai Joyo's dream, Gai Joyo's death, and Gai Joyo's wish. A hero who should have been the most brilliant in history, but because he missed an era, he couldn't reach the peak before he died. This was a supreme hero with regrets. He was also an old man who still had dreams in his heart. Although he couldn't fulfill his wishes, he spent his last years protecting the human race. In the end, in the battle with the archaic emperor, it burned and ended. He won! Boss Chu has won this battle! The crisis of the human race is over! 5 million years, as expected of Wu-Ke Heavenly Emperor who has lived for 5 million years. In the past, Emperor Wu sure was as dazzling as you were. To be able to step into the great emperor level, their state of mind had been tempered for at least 10,000 years. They had their own pride and disdain to deceive the world. On the star, Chu Bei put his hands behind his back and looked at Gai Jiuyo. He said, "Although I can't completely heal your Dao injuries with my current strength, I can delay the arrival of that day for you." As his calm voice fell, the dark starry sky was filled with divine radiance again. It was so bright that one couldn't open their eyes. In the divine radiance, countless stars trembled at the same time. The majestic aura of life hidden in the starry sky was enveloped by lightning and poured into Gai Jiuyo's body. Buzz, 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 runes flickered and the Emperor's voice filled the air. Almost instantly, Gai Jiuyo's body, which was gradually turning transparent, stopped dissipating. Even the droplets of light began to return to Gai Jiuyo's body. As they gathered bit by bit, Gai Jiuyo's body began to solidify. It was a slow process. Chu Bei glanced at Gai Jiuyo and didn't pay too much attention to him. He looked at the ancient creatures in middle ground. The ancient creatures felt an inexplicable sense of danger. However, before they could do anything, miserable cries reverberated in middle ground. In a few breaths, all the ancient creatures' bodies and souls exploded together. None of them survived, including the ancient king. Dead, they're all dead! Is this the power of a great emperor? He killed an ancient creature with a thought. With Boss Chu guarding the human race, who would dare to invade us in the future? Thanks to Boss Chu, it seems like the Lord Guardian doesn't have to die. Look, Boss Chu is out. He's coming! On the battlefield, the human cultivators looked at the ancient creatures that had suddenly exploded with joy. It was also at this moment that someone pointed at the sky and cried out in alarm. In the star regions, Chu Bei stepped on the stars. With each step, he seemed to have crossed thousands of star regions. In an instant, he descended from the sky and appeared above the battlefield in the central plains. "Greetings, Boss Chu!" The 4 emperors of Middle Ground, the Temple Master of the War God Temple, the Great Thunderclap Master, the Demon Lord of the Southern Mountains, Jian Taishu, and the other big shots of the 5 regions immediately cupped their fists and bowed respectfully to Chu Bei. Almost at the same time, all the human cultivators bowed and put their palms together with piety in their eyes. The gratitude on their faces came from the bottom of their hearts. Boss Chu had not only saved them, but also the entire human race. Chu Bei glanced at the 4 emperors of Middle Ground and nodded slightly as a greeting. Then, he waved his sleeves and stepped on the void toward the west. "Where is Boss Chu going?" Everyone looked at Chu Bei's back. The gazes of these figures pierced through the sky, watching every move of the undying mountain. At the same time, the reincarnation sea, the immortal mausoleum, the divine ruins, and the sky burial island, more or less, had several gazes cast towards the undying mountain and fixed on Chu Bei. Every mountain in the undying mountain was terrifyingly black. Some were like sword blades that towered into the clouds, and some were like wild bulls lying on the ground. Mist lingered around them, and they were majestic. In the mountains, one could see stone men that had lost an arm picking herbs, and stone crows that were missing a claw flying. Everywhere was mysterious and strange. "You still came!" A low roar came from the depths of the undying mountain. "This is my promise." Chu Bei stood in the void with his hands crossed in front of his chest. His indifferent gaze swept across the black mountain in front of him. His robes fluttered without wind, and his eyes were dazzling and terrifying. The last time he came, he was only a quasi-emperor and knew that he couldn't take the path understanding tree from the other party, so he could only leave. But now, he could mobilize Xiao Hei's power. Even if it was only a part of it, he was confident that he could crush the other party. 5 million years, you have lived for far longer than I imagined. If you didn't come, I wouldn't have looked for you. 100,000 years ago, Su Kong also came and tried to flatten this place, but he failed. Do you think you will succeed? A voice came from the depths of the undying mountain again. Chu Bei smiled and didn't say anything. He just took a step forward and stepped on the golden path, arriving in the depths of the undying mountain. Boom! Chu Bei stepped down, and the mountain that stood in the center of the depths of the undying mountain instantly collapsed, turning into rubble that flew in all directions. A shocking explosion shook the entire Big Dipper. Perhaps it was deliberately done by Chu Bei, but the scene of him in the undying mountain actually appeared in the sky, and everyone in the Big Dipper could clearly see it. Oh my God! Is Boss Chu so domineering? Ordinary people can't avoid a forbidden area of life, but Boss Chu went straight to the deepest part. He even flattened the largest mountain in a simple and violent way. As expected of Boss Chu. Throughout history, even among those great emperors who would dare to do this. In the face of absolute strength, the so-called forbidden area of life doesn't exist. The crowd of cultivators stared at the scene in the sky, dumbfounded. Aren't you looking down on me too much? So what if you have lived for 5 million years? I'm not that little guy from the primordial race that you killed. I haven't even entered the great emperor realm. An angry roar sounded, and a tall and majestic figure holding a black halberd appeared in front of Chu Bei, murderous intent surging. Chapter 316. Stone Emperor, you guys fight. I'm going back to sleep. I don't have much time left, so I won't get involved in this mess. An old man walked out of the mountain with the black tortoise divine herb in his arms. He glanced at the Stone Emperor and Hong Jun, shook his head, dug a hole, and lay down in it. The Stone Emperor glanced at the old man. He was expressionless, and did not say anything. As for Chu Bei, he naturally ignored such a tactful old man. What? He's the Stone Emperor. 500,000 years ago, he was born in the chaos. He absorbed the power of the stars and transformed into the Stone Emperor. I can't believe he's still alive. Moreover, he's the master of the undying mountain. No wonder even the Void Emperor and the Sage Physique couldn't destroy the undying mountain. The Stone Emperor, an ancient great emperor that only existed in the records of books. Hearing the old man's name, some cultivators were petrified when they recalled the various deeds of the Stone Emperor. Let's go somewhere else, Chu Bei said calmly. He moved and appeared in a star field in the blink of an eye. Ha! It's great to be able to fight a great emperor from the beginning of the chaos. The Stone Emperor laughed arrogantly. His messy hair danced in the wind as he followed Chu Bei to a star field. The Stone Emperor held his halberd and slashed at Chu Bei. Black light tore through eternity and illuminated the galaxy. A real battle between great emperors! Ji Ziyu exclaimed. Her mouth formed a circle. No, the Stone Emperor isn't a great emperor yet. In order to survive, he severed one of his Dao paths and fell from the great emperor level. His current strength is between a 9th heaven boundary emperor and a great emperor. In the starry sky, Gai Jiuyo seemed to have heard Ji Ziyu's exclamation and suddenly spoke. His voice drifted through the entire Big Dipper. Buzz! In the starry sky, the Stone Emperor's halberd slashed down with a buzzing sound. Dragon patterns appeared, and a black dragon soared and pounced at Chu Bei. The Sky Piercer had a spirit, and it bared its fangs and brandished its claws. This was the strongest Emperor-level attack. Don't waste time. You're too weak now. Chu Bei didn't even move. With a raise of his hand, the primal chaos in the starry sky surged and formed a huge cauldron. The mouth of the cauldron spewed out black lightning that crushed the universe. Chi La! A bolt of lightning shot out and clashed head-on with the ancient halberd. In the clash, the halberd was knocked back. That's true. This emperor shouldn't take any chances. The Stone Emperor's self-deprecating voice drifted through the starry sky, and his entire body started to emit a resounding sound. Immediately after, as the Emperor Dao laws burst forth, millions of strands of celestial light shot out from the Stone Emperor's body. At this moment, in order to battle Chu Bei, the Stone Emperor had ascended to a higher level. He had returned to the Emperor realm. Regardless of whether he won or lost this battle, it would all come to an end. If he could go back in time, perhaps he would have allowed the other party to take away the Tree of Enlightenment instead of trying to kill the other party. But now, he had no way out. Fight! As soon as the Stone Emperor spoke, a strange phenomenon appeared behind him. Lone smoke rises in the great desert, the long river sets and the round sun sets. In the strange phenomenon, a stone giant was born from a barren star. Its roar caused mountains and galaxies to collapse. This was the scene when the Stone Emperor was born. At that time, the heavens trembled because of him, and the starry sky resonated because of him. As soon as he was born, his might suppressed the ancient desolate realm. He had received the blessing of the starry sky, and his divine Tao laws were peerless. He was born in accordance with the will of heaven and earth, and all kinds of secret techniques and forbidden mystical abilities had reached the consummate level. His magic power was boundless. And at this moment, in the instant that he returned to the Emperor realm in his battle with Chu Bei, he directly used the ultimate divine technique, the heavens. He was born from the power of the starry sky, and could be considered a descendant of the heavens. When he used the divine technique, the starry sky moved, and 10,000 das resonated. Boom! The starry river surged, and countless stars covered the sky and surged over like a surging sea. Divine Tao laws and divine chains of order interweaved, connecting the past, present, and future. It was as if the heavens were angry. A huge stone giant appeared behind the Stone Emperor, and then it merged with his body. It held a halberd that flickered with a metallic luster, and it slashed down at Chu Bei. This was the Stone Emperor's killing move. It could also be said that this was the ultimate strike of the halberd. The halberd fell, and the starry sky lost its color, and the ancient region collapsed. Even though they were separated by tens of thousands of galaxies, the people in the Big Dipper could still feel the ground shaking violently. This strike was really too terrifying. Chu Bei's expression became serious, and he no longer looked down on his opponent. The primal chaos phenomenon appeared behind him. An endless divine light gathered in his palm until it formed a snake-shaped sword. The sword unsheathed, and thunder rumbled. A halberd and a sword, both of them attacked at the same time. In an instant, the starry sky was filled with blazing light. It was boundless, and nothing could be seen. One could only hear countless stars exploding one after another, and it was as if the universe was about to be destroyed. The starry sky exploded, and the heavens trembled. The vast sea of light gradually dissipated, and two figures appeared. A halberd landed in front of Chu Bei, and one could vaguely see the layer of ripples on the surface of Chu Bei's body being sliced open. However, this layer of ripples quickly surged and enveloped Chu Bei again. Looking at the Stone Emperor again, he stood tall in the sky. His thick hair danced in the wind, and he looked like a heavenly god. However, at this moment, his eyes dimmed. A snake-shaped sword formed from the power of primal chaos had mercilessly sliced into the space between his eyebrows, all the way until it reached his brain. Blood flowed from there, and it was a ghastly sight. The snake-shaped sword was suffused with divine light, and lightning and fire danced as it slowly seeped into the Stone Emperor's brain. This was the most terrifying power in the universe burning. The Stone Emperor's immortal foundation disintegrated, and cracking sounds rang out incessantly. The Tao of his life started to dissipate. I still lost in the end. As the desolate voice faded, the Stone Emperor's body exploded, turning into a bloody mist. It turned into the most terrifying blood rain in the world, and rushed into the surroundings of the universe. Although this was a battle between great emperors, it was actually just a confrontation of a single move. Regardless of whether it was the Stone Emperor or Chu Bei, they had both used their most powerful moves. Looking at the blood rain in the starry sky, Chu Bei didn't say a word. He had survived this life-or-death battle, and he could be considered the victor. However, judging from this battle, his victory wasn't fair. After all, this wasn't his true strength. He had borrowed Xiao Hei's power. After glancing at the battlefield again, Chu Bei stepped on the river of stars and left. He returned to the Big Dipper and landed in the sky above the undying mountain. He pointed a finger, and an ancient tree in the mountain soared into the sky and flew in front of Chu Bei. It wasn't very tall, only about 3 meters tall, but it was as strong as a horned dragon. Its old skin was cracked, as if it had experienced millions of years. It was very strange. The leaves on the tree weren't the same, and each leaf was different from the others. They were all sparkling and translucent, as if they were carved out of jade. Some of the leaves on this ancient tree were shaped like small cauldrons, and they were misty. Some of the leaves were like divine phoenixes, and they flickered with multicolored light. Some of the leaves were like immortals sitting cross-legged, and they were incomparably vivid. There were all kinds of colors on the tree. The host has successfully obtained the Tree of Enlightenment T. The host's cultivation level has increased to the peak of level 12. Level 12 Commodity Authority has been unlocked. If you want to unlock level 13 Commodity Authority, you can go to the Journey to the West Realm. Unlocking requirements: Journey to the West Realm. The host's reputation points must reach 90, and the All Heavens shop must reach 90 reputation points. When Chu Bei subdued the Tree of Enlightenment according to the method given by the system, a series of system notifications rang out. The Stone Emperor has been defeated. Boss Chu has won. They're both great emperors, but Boss Chu still won. Moreover, he's unscathed. In that case, from now on, won't the Undying Mountain be removed from the 7 life forbidden zones? I'm afraid Boss Chu is the strongest great emperor since ancient times. You're wrong. Boss Chu severed 9,999 of his own Tao to fall to the great emperor realm. At his peak, he might be the only immortal. Looking at the battle in the sky, everyone recovered from their shock. When their gazes landed on the figure above the Undying Mountain, they were in a daze. Immortal, what kind of existence is that? In the starry sky, Gai Jiuyo sat cross-legged. His eyes pierced through the void and landed on Chu Bei's body as he murmured softly. Obviously, the ultimate battle between Chu Bei and the Stone Emperor had once again shocked him. They were both great emperors, but one of them had died, while the other was safe and sound. O my immeasurable heavenly venerate, when can I be as strong as the boss and be worshipped by the world? Duanda's eyes were burning, and his face was full of envy. In the forbidden area of the remote antiquity. What kind of technique is that? Why can't I see through it at all? The eyes of the great success sacred being, who was firmly locked by 4 immortal chains made of divine gold, shot out 2 rays of deep green light toward the woman not far away. I can't see through it. Maybe it's a technique from 5 million years ago, or maybe it's a technique that can only be obtained after reaching that realm. The woman shook her head. At some point, a ghost mask had appeared in her hand. If you were to fight him, how confident are you? The great success sacred being asked again. I've never fought him. The woman shook her head again. In the origin ancient mine, the reddish-brown ground seemed to have been soaked in blood. It was cold and lonely. Desolation and emptiness coexisted. Some huge rocks stood sporadically on the ground. At first glance, they looked like tombstones. The world was dark and gloomy, and the faint black fog added a sense of eeriness to this world. The endless reddish-brown ground was serene and deathly silent. There was no sign of life at all. The Stone Emperor was defeated. It was a fair battle. However, even though he had recovered his great emperor strength, he was still defeated. Is this an old monster who has lived for 5 million years? Even though he killed himself, he was still fearless when facing a great emperor. I hope he didn't come to the flat forbidden zone. I really don't want to fight with him. In the sky above the origin ancient mine, waves of distant, low, and indistinct sounds intertwined. Chapter 317. Boss, her relationship with little Nan Nan. Yi Fan hugged little Nan Nan and seemed to have guessed something. He turned to look at Chu Bei again. And at this moment, Chu Bei's gaze landed on the female empress. Such a life truly makes one sigh. How much longer will it take to continue like this? Wait for him to come back. Vicious pointed at Yi Fan and said. After saying that, Vicious stopped moving. His eyes were like the sea and the abyss. Yi Fan's body shook and froze on the spot. Why was he involved again? Could it be that the young man in the image was his previous life? As an earthling, Yi Fan had read countless novels. His mind was immediately opened and his thoughts were in a mess. Do you think he can reflect the same flower soul when he is at the peak of his glory? Chu Bei asked with a smile. Then we'll keep waiting. After saying those 5 words, the Empress looked at Yi Fan and little Nan Nan one last time. Then, she turned around and landed on the sacred mountain. Looking at the Empress's back, Chu Bei sighed and felt melancholy. Not for immortality, but to wait for her return in the mortal world. This was the best description of Vicious. You will know in the future. Chu Bei smiled at Yi Fan's confused eyes. Not long after Vicious left, the sage who was bound by the 4 divine chains nodded at Chu Bei and returned to the abyss. The strange phenomenon in the sky disappeared. Chu Bei took Yi Fan, little Nan Nan, and the treasures that he had plundered from the various forbidden areas and disappeared from the sky above the forbidden area of remote antiquity. Everything had ended, but the Big Dipper cultivators could not calm down. On this day, they experienced the invasion of ancient creatures and countless casualties. They witnessed the battle between boundary thearchs and thearchs. They saw Boss Chu, who had lived for 5 million years, the legendary deity. They understood the past of the Empress. The next day, Zhongzhou, the western desert, the Nanling Mountains, and the northern plains began to clean up the battlefield and rebuild their homes under the leadership of various top forces. Although a day had passed, every corner of the Big Dipper was still discussing the battle of the day before. Among them, the most talked about topic was Boss Chu, Chu Bei. This immortal who had lived for 5 million years. It was not only the cultivators. In the ordinary taverns, some storytellers were talking excitedly as if they were the savior of the world. Countless cities began to erect statues of gods. These statues happened to be Chu Bei's appearance. The 3rd day. In a hall of the Jiang family of the ancients, purple clouds and thunder roared. Yi Fan yelled out as he leaped into the air and appeared in the void. A green lotus appeared beside him. It only had 3 leaves, but it contained the will of the Tao that gave birth to all things. With a slight tremble, it seemed to have frozen the void. Hearing the noise, a group of experts including Jiang Taishu and the patriarch of the Jiang clan immediately appeared. The 4 Supremes! He broke the curse of the sacred body of the ancients. The heavenly lotus of chaos. This is one of the most terrifying visions of the ancient times. Everyone exclaimed in shock. The 7th day. In a mountain range 100 kilometers away from the Jiang family. Above the mountain range, heaven and earth were raging. The thunder tribulation of 95, heavenly tribulation of 5 elements, true tribulation of Tayin, tribulation of water and fire. All kinds of heavenly punishment covered the sky. The entire mountain range was submerged. Only a blurry figure could be seen resisting the tribulation amidst the lightning radiance. Monster! A real monster! 7 days from the Taoist palace to the 4 Supremes and then to the great dragon tribulation. The sacred body of the ancients is not that terrifying. The world fruit in his body is the real horror. Although Boss Chu helped him, if it were us, we would have been blown up by the energy in those treasures before we could break through. A group of Jiang family cultivators hovered in the sky not far away, looking at the blurry figure with envy in their eyes. Above the mountain range, it was white and deafening. Silver snakes danced and lightning flashed everywhere like an ocean. Brontosaurus were in the sky. There were hundreds and thousands of them. Each bolt of lightning was as thick as a mountain ridge, dancing in the sky. Yi Fan was sitting in the sky with his legs crossed. He pointed his finger and guided the lightning into his body. At the same time, a huge cauldron appeared. It was formed by golden lightning and was covered with patterns. It was the law of heaven and earth. Purple clouds surrounded the cauldron. It was the chi of all creation. This brat has the potential to become a great emperor. Duanda smacked his lips. Woof! He will be the youngest great emperor in history. The Black Emperor howled. Boom! Accompanied by a loud noise, a dragon's roar came from Yifan's body. In an instant, Yifan's back was like a dragon. Spiritual essence rushed out, and his spine seemed to be flying out. That was the sign of dragon transformation. The dragon transformation realm was a perfect match for its name. It nourished a dragon in one's body and transformed it. The dragon in the human body was the spine. All power was supported by the spine. As the dragon's roar came out, Yifan's body crackled. His spine was as bright as gold and every joint was moving. It was as if a dragon had awakened. Is this still the dragon transformation tribulation? The Jiang family head looked at the sky above the mountain range, dumbfounded. There, 81 heavenly dragons descended from the sky. They were vivid and lifelike as they coiled about in the void. The dragon heads were facing Yifan as if they had existed since ancient times. They were emitting a mysterious and demonic aura. With a loud roar, Yifan dashed forward and turned into a thunderbolt. He faced the 81 heavenly dragons with lightning. After a long while, the thunderbolts above the mountain range dissipated and everything became calm. Yifan stepped on the void and landed in front of Chu Bei. He bowed deeply. Not only Yifan, but Ji Ziyue, Jiang Tingting, Duanda, Little Nan Nan, and the other representatives also became the first batch of beneficiaries of the All Heavens shop. Time passed in the blink of an eye. Another 3 months passed. In these 3 months, with the help of various leaders, the All Heavens shop opened all over the 5 major regions. Boss, when will you be back? Yifan, Duanda, and the others sent Chu Bei off. Their eyes were filled with reluctance. When you are strong enough, you can come and find me yourself, Chu Bei said with a smile. As his voice fell, his gaze swept across Jiang Taishu, Ji Ziyue, and the others. He waved his sleeve. Rumble! There was a roar, and the void in front of Chu Bei began to distort. After a while, a blue intersecting wheel slowly appeared. At the top of the wheel, the words, Plane Space-Time Wheel, were particularly conspicuous. Below it, there were 4 slightly smaller words, West Plane. Looking at it carefully, there was a blue passage in the wheel that was woven by the river of time. Looking at the space-time wheel that appeared, Chu Bei seemed to have been prepared. He took a step forward and stepped into the space-time wheel. The moment he entered the space-time wheel, the majestic divine power in Chu Bei's body was shackled and could not be mobilized. Like the previous 2 times, he did not immediately appear in the West Plane. Instead, he swam in a wonderful world woven by the river of time, drifting forward without day or night. You must be the Marquis of Fengxian County. Do you know that you have something to do with the lack of rain for the past 3 years? Chu Bei looked at the middle-aged man calmly. What? It has something to do with me? The Marquis of Fengxian County was stunned. 3 years ago, the Jade Emperor inspected Fengxian County. At that time, the 2 of you were quarreling. Not only did you overturn the offering table, but you also let the dog eat the offerings on the ground. Because of this, the Jade Emperor punished Fengxian County. Chu Bei explained the reason. Of course, the Jade Emperor's punishment was not unforgivable. He only needed to do 3 things. The first was for the chicken in the heavenly court to finish pecking at the mountain of rice. The second was for the dog to lick the mountain of flour. The third was for the lamp to burn the foot-long golden lock. However, by the time these 3 things were done, Fengxian County would have been in ruins. So it's all because of me. I'm a sinner. After hearing Chu Bei's explanation, the Marquis of Fengxian County turned pale and muttered to herself. Immortal, as long as you can reign on Fengxian County, I'm willing to die to atone for my sins. After a while, the Marquis of Fengxian County looked at Chu Bei with determination. I'm not familiar with the Jade Emperor. Furthermore, it's just a matter of convenience. Chu Bei smiled and waved his hand. A blue crystal ball flew out from his palm and hung high above Fengxian County. Whoosh! Just as everyone in the county focused their attention on the crystal ball, it emitted a brilliant light. In the next moment, dark clouds rolled, thunder rumbled, and heavy rain poured down. It's raining! It's really raining! The people in the county let the raindrops fall on their bodies and cried tears of joy. This pearl is called the Thunder Rain Pearl. When you need it, it will automatically rain for you, Chu Bei said calmly. Thank you, Immortal! May I know your celestial title? I can build a temple for you in the county. The Marquis of Fengxian County looked at Chu Bei with gratitude. Hearing the Marquis of Fengxian County, Chu Bei was about to shake his head. However, he remembered that he had the authority to unlock level 13 items and changed his mind. I'm a businessman. You can call me Boss Chu. As for building a temple for you, that's up to you. With that, Chu Bei turned and left. He flew toward the level 1 agent marked on the map. Along the way, Chu Bei gradually organized the information about this plane. Although this place was similar to the journey to the west that he knew, there were still some differences. For example, the Jade Emperor was not a useless person like in the Journey to the West television series. He was an unparalleled expert. When this universe was first born, there was a primordial spirit of the primordial chaos. His spiritual cavities had just opened and he gradually gained intelligence. This primordial spirit unintentionally obtained the creation divine weapon from the beginning of the universe in West Kunlun. After thousands of generations of cultivation, the primordial spirit's merit was complete, and his cultivation was complete. In the long and unbearable chaotic universe, the creation primordial spirit became the only sane person in this universe. He endured unimaginable loneliness. In the end, he could no longer bear the loneliness. The creation primordial spirit used the supreme spiritual power of the creation divine weapon to search for the chaotic universe. He found 4 different living beings with their spiritual cavities. Next, the creation primordial spirit imparted a cultivation technique to the 4 living beings. The eldest, Hong Jun, cultivated Xian Qing Qi. The second, Han Kun, cultivated Xian Ling Qi. The third, Nua, cultivated Xian Qing Qi. The fourth, Luya, cultivated Xian Ming Qi. The later generations called them Ancestor Hong Jun, Ancestor Han Kun, Goddess Niwa, and Tao Lord Luya. Later, Ancestor Hong Jun took in 3 disciples. They were Heavenly Lord Dao De, Pangu, and Tong Tian. The eldest disciple, Heavenly Lord Dao De, cultivated 3 different realms, Taishian Qing Qi, Yushuan Qing Qi, and Shangshuan Qing Qi from his primordial spirit true body. He even created a sect called Taoism. The other one was called Taishang Lao Jun. The second disciple, Pangu, felt that the world was chaotic and indistinguishable. He was very unhappy. He swung his axe and opened a new world. He also created a sect called Chan Sect. The later generations of mortals felt that he had created the world and respected him as the heavenly lord of primordial beginning. The third disciple, Tong Tian, created a sect called Jia Sect. The later generations all respected him as the heavenly lord of numinous treasure. Some also respected him as the Tong Tian sect. Ancestor Han Kun cultivated Xian Ling Qi. He had countless disciples, including pythons, snakes, dragons, lions, and monkeys. He did not reject any living beings. The 2 disciples he was most proud of, the eldest disciple was called Taoist Jiayin, and the second disciple was called Taoist Junti. They had extraordinary immortal hearts and profound Tao skills. The eldest disciple, Taoist Jiayin, was also respected by the world as Shakyamuni. He created a sect called Buddhism, which was also Buddha Gautama. The second disciple, Taoist Junti, was respected by the world as Patriarch Bodhi. He was in a corner and taught the world Tao techniques. Goddess Niwa cultivated Xian Qing Qi. She had a human head and a snake body. She was reclusive, but she was broad-minded and had the ambition to bemoan the state of the universe. After her disciple nephew, Pangu, chiseled out a world with his axe, she pitted the universe and created countless men and women clay figurines, allowing them to come to life. Dao monarch Liu cultivated Xian Ming Qi. The essence of fire flew out of the three realms and was not in the five elements. It was not under the control of the sky palaces and did not enter the underworld. Besides a series of macroscopic introductions about the journey to the West Plane, there was also an introduction to the cultivation system. Spirit congealing realm. One could absorb spiritual qi and convert it into spiritual energy to refine the body. Spirit channeling realm. One could release spiritual energy from runes through spiritual energy. Spiritual energy was no longer limited to the body. Spirit refinement realm. One could release spiritual energy freely. From here on, spells were possible. Spirit transformation realm. One's spiritual energy could be converted into God power. One's strength would be greatly enhanced. One could also change one's appearance through spells. After that were itinerant immortals, golden immortals, Tai itinerant immortals, Tai golden immortals, Dalio disbanded immortals, Dalio golden immortals, Dalio chaos immortals, heavenly immortals, immortal emperors, and chaos immortals. According to the information given by the system, this Genesis primordial spirit was an immortal emperor. At this moment, Chu Bei's cultivation was at the pinnacle of level 12. In the journey to the West Plane, it was equivalent to a peak itinerant immortal. Since Pangu created the world, this world was divided into 4 major continents. They were called Dongxing Divine Continent, Aparagodania Continent, Nanbu Continent, and Uttarakura Continent. Dongxing Divine Continent had a country called Alai. On the Sea of Alai, there was a mountain called Huagua Mountain. Huagua Mountain was the ancestor of mountain ranges. It stood majestically on the sea and was covered with strange rocks. The mountain was covered with exotic flowers and herbs, as well as rare birds and beasts. It was lush and green all year round. It was a rare treasure land. Come and see! This stone is actually glowing. Oh my God, is this stone going to become a spirit? This stone has a great history. According to my grandfather's great-grandfather, in their era, this stone had many strange phenomena. At the peak of Huagua Mountain, a group of monkeys that spoke human language were walking around a mountain rock. They were all staring at it in surprise and were talking about it. Besides the monkeys, there were some other wild beasts around the mountain rock, such as porcupines, white rabbits, sparrows, and forest deer. This mountain rock was 36 feet and 5 inches tall and 34 feet wide. There were 9 orifices and 8 holes on it. There were no tall trees around, only some Ganoderma and orchid peanuts under the rock. At this moment, this mountain rock was releasing a strange light. One could faintly hear a slight trembling sound. "You little beasts, get out of my way!" Chapter 319. Swoosh, swoosh. However, within a few breaths, 2 more sounds could be heard. Then, 2 more figures appeared above the mountain rock. When the beasts in the mountain saw the 2 figures clearly, they all trembled and prostrated themselves on the ground. Like the Lion Ox King, the 2 new figures were also the overlords of the Flower Fruit Mountain. They had a fierce reputation. For example, the Silver Centipede King looked like a centipede, but it had a pair of silver wings. It was 5 meters long and as thick as an arm. Its entire body was shining as if it was made of silver. The Blue Wing King looked like a sparrow, but his body was several times larger. His entire body was wrapped in flames. As he flapped his wings, rolling flames burned the void. At this moment, the 3 powerful overlords of the Flower Fruit Mountain locked their eyes on the mountain rock that was emitting a demonic light. Their eyes were filled with excitement and anticipation. "Aren't you too greedy? This is the mountain that I'm in charge of. What are you doing here?" The Lion Ox King glanced coldly at the Silver Centipede King and the Blue Wing King. He snorted with dissatisfaction. Brother Lion Ox, don't be angry. We saw a strange phenomenon on your mountain and were worried that something would happen to you. The Blue Wing King spoke and let out a mocking laugh. Bullsh*T. You must be eyeing my immortal treasure. The Lion Ox King's expression became even more dissatisfied. When did this become your immortal treasure? Although it's on your mountain, it's formed by gathering the spirit energy of the entire flower fruit mountain. Even if it's an immortal treasure, I have a share. The Silver Centipede King was not as pretentious as the Blue Wing King. He directly pointed out his purpose. It's up to each of us to decide who gets the immortal treasure. Rumble. As soon as the Silver Centipede King finished speaking, the mountain rocks shook violently, and the demonic light became even more dazzling. The originally clear sky suddenly darkened. Dark clouds surged out, and bolts of lightning struck down. Thin and long lightning curled around the mountain rock. In a moment, the mountain rock was surrounded by a hazy aura. A strange phenomenon has appeared. There must be an immortal treasure hidden in this rock. It's coming out. The immortal treasure is coming out. The Lion Ox King, Silver Centipede King, and Blue Wings King's eyes were burning with passion. At the same time, their auras were rising as they were on guard against each other. The three of them were already prepared to take action. Once the stone cracked open and the immortal treasure appeared, they would disregard their own safety and rush to seize the immortal treasure at the first possible moment. As the three overlords waited anxiously, the mountain rock gradually turned transparent, and the immortal treasure hidden within it was revealed to the wild beasts. You're a human! How dare you step into our territory? Seeing Chu Bei's appearance, the Lion Ox King, the Silver Centipede King, and the Blue Wing King's faces instantly darkened. Then, the three of them lit up with different colors of light at the same time. Roar! The three demonic beasts roared. They opened their mouths and spat out a spell that gathered a huge amount of spiritual energy. Bang! Seeing that the three demonic beasts' spell attack was about to land on Chu Bei waved his sleeve and easily destroyed the three spells. Then, the three demonic beasts were smashed in different directions like cannonballs, as if they were hit by a heavy hammer. Three loud sounds rang out, and three deep pits with a diameter of 10 meters appeared on the ground. Dust filled the air, and the miserable howls of the Lion Ox King, the Silver Centipede King, and the Blue Wing King could be heard. The Lion Ox King and the others were defeated. What a terrifying human! Could it be that he's an immortal? The group of wild beasts in the mountains suddenly trembled. After sneaking a glance at Chu Bei, they retreated with fear on their faces. Looking at the three huge pits in the distance, the stone monkey recovered from its shock. Then, it looked at Chu Bei with admiration. Thank you, immortal! Rascal monkey, do you know what would have happened if I hadn't intervened just now? Chu Bei smiled and looked at the stone monkey. I would have been eaten by them. The stone monkey's face was a little ugly, and there was a hint of helplessness. In this world, the law of the jungle is the basic rule. Although I saved you this time, if you encounter the same situation in the future, what will you do? Chu Bei put his hands behind his back. When he looked at the stone monkey, he had the appearance of a mysterious and unfathomable expert. The stone monkey was stunned. Then, it knelt in front of Chu Bei with a plop. Immortal, please accept me as your disciple and teach me the immortal arts. Looking at the stone monkey who was kneeling down before him, Chu Bei's gaze was filled with praise. This level of comprehension was really not to be underestimated. It was no wonder that the stone monkey was able to understand the meaning behind Patriarch Subhudi's 3 heads. I passed by this place while traveling and realized that I have an affinity with you, rascal monkey. Since you are willing to become my disciple, I will accept you as my disciple today. Chu Bei waved his sleeve and lifted the stone monkey up. He said, You jumped out of the stone just now and don't have a name. Master will give you a name. Disciple greets Master. Master, please give me a name. The stone monkey's face was filled with joy. It excitedly bowed to Chu Bei. Master sees that you look like a macaque that eats pine cones. The word macaque has been removed from the word macaque. Ancient means old, and moon means een. Olding can't be changed, so I will give you the surname macaque. The word macaque has been removed from the word macaque. The child is a male, and the child is a baby. It fits the basic theory of babies. How about the surname Sun? Chu Bei held his chin with his hand and pretended to be thinking. I have the surname. As for the name, comprehension is my heart. This heart is a pure nature. It is neither born nor destroyed, either dirty nor pure, either increasing nor decreasing. Only by comprehending that my heart is pure can I understand the meaning of being a human. Only by not forgetting one's original intention can one reach the end. Let's call you Sun Wukong. Sun Wukong, this name is nice. Thank you, Master. Disciple will be called Sun Wukong from now on. The stone monkey was in high spirits. It bounced and somersaulted. Disciple, since you have become my disciple, Master will naturally give you an opportunity. Chu Bei waved at the stone monkey. Opportunity? Is that an immortal art? The stone monkey squatted in front of Chu Bei. Its eyes were filled with anticipation. Chu Bei smiled. With a wave of his right hand, the proxy ring flew toward the stone monkey. Put it on. With your blood as the contract, you will embark on a simple cultivation path. Yes, Master. Sun Wukong didn't hesitate. He bit his index finger and dripped a drop of blood into the proxy ring. Host has successfully signed the first-level proxy ring. You have obtained the right to use Xiao Hei's power once. First-level proxy gift pack issued. The system's voice rang out in Chu Bei's mind. Sun Wukong, this is a meeting gift from Master to you. Chu Bei opened the proxy gift pack. There was a sparkling and translucent alchemy pill inside. It smells so good. Sun Wukong took the spirit pill and sniffed it. He didn't even know its effects and directly tossed it into his mouth. My body. Soon, Sun Wukong noticed the changes in his body. After swallowing the alchemy pill, every cell, every bone, and every piece of flesh in his body was crazily strengthened. Master, after your disciple ate the alchemy pill you gave me, I seem to have gained control of a mysterious energy. Sun Wukong stretched his body and opened his eyes wide. He looked at Chu Bei excitedly. Then, an eager expression appeared on his face. After somersaulting twice, Sun Wukong arrived in front of a huge mountain rock. This mountain rock was dozens of times bigger than the one he jumped out of. It was 8 meters tall and 10 meters long. Sun Wukong placed both his hands on the huge mountain rock. With a loud shout, his hands shone with a white light. Rumble! In the next moment, the huge mountain rock that was the size of a house was lifted up by Sun Wukong. Looking at his expression, it seemed that he didn't use much strength. Chapter 320. Is this the inheritance of that immortal? What immortal pill is that exactly? It actually gave the stone monkey such a terrifying strength in an instant. The wild beasts in the mountains looked at the scene before them in a daze. Their faces were filled with astonishment, and their gazes were filled with envy. When they looked at Chu Bei again, their gazes were filled with admiration and respect. Master, your disciple's ability seems to be able to change their weight. Sun Wukong had an agitated look on his face. After that, he found a few bigger rocks and tried them out. The one you ate earlier is called the gravity pill. It's already your innate ability. When you cultivate it to the major completion stage, you can even collapse the sky palaces with a single thought. Chu Bei smiled and looked at Sun Wukong. This gravity pill was the same as the thunderbolt pill that Yi Fan ate. They were both exclusive products of the system. Master, since you are a merchant, where is your shop? After digesting the information in his mind, Sun Wukong looked at Chu Bei curiously. Chu Bei glanced at Sun Wukong but didn't reply. he merely waved his sleeves. Splash! In the blink of an eye, Chu Bei brought Sun Wukong to a waterfall. The waterfall flowed down rapidly, splashing water everywhere. The sound was like thunder, and the white water droplets hung before their eyes like a curtain made of beads. A group of monkeys hid at the side far away, following behind Chu Bei with curiosity on their faces. Master, why did you bring your disciple here? Sun Wukong pointed at the waterfall in front of him with a perplexed look on his face. Chu Bei smiled and tapped out with a finger. Instantly, the rapid waterfall split into two and flowed to the sides. There's actually a cave! The monkeys in the distance exclaimed. They had lived here for so many years, but they didn't know that there was such a cave hidden behind the waterfall. On the stone walls on both sides of the cave, a row of vertical words were engraved: Flower Fruit Mountain Blessed Land, Water Curtain Cave Paradise. After entering the cave, they looked around and saw that it was extremely spacious. There were stone tables, stone chairs, stone beds, and other things. There were even bamboos growing in the corners, and some strange flowers emitted an intoxicating fragrance. Such a layout made it seem like immortals had once lived here. Let's build the first one here. Returning to the cave, Chu Bei pointed his finger like a sword and spoke in a calm voice. Above the cave, 4 large words appeared: All Heaven's Shop. Master, don't tell me you don't have a shop? Monkey Son asked Chu Bei in a probing manner as he stared at the 4 golden words. Master has just arrived in this world. In the future, this first shop will be managed by you. For this reason, you should raise your strength as soon as possible. Chu Bei patted Sun Wukong. Take them away. The Wyrm king ordered the prawn soldiers and crab generals behind him, as if he was too lazy to do it himself. Immediately, a group of prawn soldiers and crab generals at the front pounced on Chu Bei with exquisite weapons. Master, let me practice. Sun Wukong bowed to Chu Bei, then directly picked up a mountain rock that was the size of a house and threw it at the prawn soldiers and crab generals that were swarming over. With a loud bang, the prawn soldiers and crab generals immediately let out miserable cries. The first wave that rushed forward was directly smashed into a bloody mess by the huge mountain rock. To have such brute strength at birth, it's indeed not an ordinary wild monkey. It's worth studying. The Wyrm king's face did not have the slightest trace of anger after the tragic death of his subordinates. Instead, it was filled with joy as he looked at Sun Wukong with a burning gaze. Rumble! In the next moment, the Wyrm king soared into the sky and opened his ferocious mouth. The surrounding spiritual energy surged violently and gathered in his mouth to form a blue ball of light. Chi! The ball of light gushed out. It was so bright and dazzling that the wild monkeys could not open their eyes. Little snake, with your cultivation level, what can you study? Seeing that the ball of light had shattered the mountain rock and was about to hit Sun Wukong, Chu Bei's calm and indifferent voice drifted in the air. Then, the ball of light was shattered by a rippling giant hand that appeared out of thin air. In the next moment, the giant hand swept across the sky. In front of the rippling giant hand, the Wyrm king's huge body seemed a little small. Before he could react, the giant hand had already grabbed him firmly with a bang. Ah! Immediately, the Wyrm king let out a miserable and painful cry, and his originally ferocious expression became distorted. Black Wyrm roar! The Wyrm king roared, and his body emitted a silver-white light. All the spiritual energy on Huawei Mountain gathered in his mouth. Soon, a beam of light that released a terrifying aura formed in his mouth. However, the beam of light ruthlessly bombarded the rippling giant hand, but it did not seem to cause any damage to the latter. The giant hand clenched tightly, and the Wyrm king's cries became even more miserable. The originally violent aura also fell like a cliff. Impossible! The Wyrm king had already entered the divine transformation stage 3 years ago. His spiritual power had already begun to transform into divine power. How could he lose? Could he really be an itinerant immortal? Or could he be an immortal official who came down from the sky to train? Otherwise, how could the WYRM king not have any room to fight back? Looking at the WYRM king's painful appearance, a hint of fear appeared on the faces of the Lion Ox king, the Silver Centipede king, and the Blue Winged king. They looked at each other and retreated at the same time. However, before they could retreat half a meter, they suddenly realized that they were inexplicably restrained by a force and could not move. When I first came here, I spared your lives. I didn't expect you to come again. Amidst the fear of the three monsters, Chu Bei's indifferent voice sounded in their ears. Immediately after, Chu Bei flicked his finger, and the bodies of the three ferocious beasts exploded. Flesh and blood splattered everywhere. They did not even have time to scream before they died. The Lion Ox King, the Silver Centipede King, the Blue Winged King, they're dead. The group of monkeys hiding behind the rock in the distance trembled in fear. They looked at Chu Bei with even more respect. I'm one of the 7 generals under the Dragon Emperor of the East Sea, the WYRM King of the East Sea. You can't kill me! Looking at the 3 monsters that had turned into a pile of flesh and blood in an instant, the WYRM King, who was caught in the palm of the giant hand, finally revealed a look of fear. A weak voice came from his mouth. As for the shrimp soldiers and crab generals who came with the WYRM King, they were already at a loss when the WYRM King was defeated. They were all stunned on the spot. Do you little guys want to become stronger? If you want to become an immortal and not an ordinary wild monkey that can be controlled by others, then follow your Monkey King in the future. Chu Bei ignored the WYRM King of the East Sea. Instead, he looked at the monkeys and pointed at Sun Wukong. Hearing this, the wild monkeys looked at each other. No one dared to make a sound. Immortal, I'm willing to worship him as my king! Finally, after about half a minute, a monkey couldn't help but kneel in front of Sun Wukong. After the first, the second, third, and 10th soon followed. Before long, there was a group of monkeys kneeling in front of Sun Wukong. Not bad. You're all very self-aware. Chu Bei nodded in satisfaction. He turned to look at Sun Wukong. Disciple, these little guys are also your kind. When your cultivation level increases, you have to take good care of them. Yes, master. Sun Wukong nodded heavily. He was clearly very happy to have a group of his kind following him. I'm famous in the heavenly weapon record. If you kill me, you'll be going against the heavenly court. The WYRM King of the East Sea trembled and released another life-saving talisman. He knew that he was too reckless this time, and had kicked a hard board. Chu Bei's gaze returned to the WYRM King of the East Sea. He smiled and said, Don't worry. My disciple and these little monkeys all lack some weapons. Out of humanitarianism, I can use you to exchange for some weapons. With a teasing tone, Chu Bei raised his hand and soared into the sky with Sun Wukong, heading toward the sea. As for the WYRM King of the East Sea, he was forced to follow closely behind Chu Bei under the attack of Ripple Giant. Oh no, they're going to barge into the Dragon Palace. Follow them! The prawn soldiers and crab generals came to their senses, and each of them pushed their speed to the limit, quickly returning to the sea. Above the East Sea, Chu Bei had his hands behind his back. After his divine sense captured the location of the East Sea Dragon Palace, he leisurely landed on the sea surface. Splash! The sea churned. Just as Chu Bei and the others were about to land on the sea surface, the blue sea water seemed to be separated by an invisible force, revealing a wide path that led straight to the bottom of the sea. Chapter 321. Who's there? Not long after Chu Bei's group landed in the sea, a figure quickly flew toward them. It was a Yiksha who was patrolling the sea. When he saw the king dragon caught by the ripples in the air, his body trembled violently. Lord King Dragon, why are you? The patrolling Yiksha first glanced at the Flood Dragon King and then moved his throat. His voice was trembling as he stammered. Finally, his terrified gaze landed on Chu Bei. Chu Bei glanced at the Yiksha and ignored him. He continued to head toward the bottom of the sea. Oh! Oh no! Someone is trespassing the Dragon Palace! Looking at Chu Bei and the others who continued to explore, the patrolling Yiksha finally reacted and exclaimed. However, no matter how fast he was, how could he be faster than Chu Bei? At the bottom of the sea, there was a group of magnificent buildings. There was a layer of light film above the buildings, which completely separated the seawater from the buildings. The words, East Sea Dragon Palace, were very eye-catching on the huge palace at the front. Looking around, the entire Dragon Palace swallowed stones to form caves and spat out stones to form flowers. The Divine Palace was built by water. Water gathered to form an abyss and water overturned to form a waterfall. There were stone pillars, stone bridges, stone statues, stone Buddhas, stone carvings, stone waterfalls, stone stalactites, stone birds and beasts, stone flowers and rare plants. Every single scene was strange and had a myriad of bearings. They were extremely lifelike and had reached the acme of perfection. It made people feel relaxed and happy. They couldn't help but slap the table in praise and gasp in amazement. Especially the largest main hall, which seemed to be covered with colorful neon lights. It was dazzling. How dare you! Who dares to trespass into the Dragon Palace? When Chu Bei's group landed in front of the main palace, a group of shrimp soldiers and crab generals rushed over. They held weapons and stopped in front of Chu Bei's group. However, when they saw the Serpent King, all of them were shocked. They retreated and looked at Chu Bei with some fear. Even the King Dragon of the East Sea was in such a miserable state. They were no match for the person in front of them. Whoosh, whoosh. An old tortoise who had already taken human form but still carried a tortoise shell on its back, as well as a creature with fins on its back and an exquisite spear, flew over. Black Flood Dragon, what's wrong with you? General Turtle and General Shark looked at the Flood Dragon King with gloomy faces. Then, they sized up Chu Bei with serious expressions. This little guy offended me. I was going to kill him directly, but after thinking about it, he still has some value. I'll use his life to exchange for some treasures. Chu Bei's gaze swept over General Turtle and General Shark. There was a hint of a smile in his words. Using the Black Flood Dragon's life to exchange for the treasures of our Dragon Palace? How dare you! Hearing Chu Bei's words, General Turtle and General Shark's faces became even more unsightly. After exchanging glances, their auras rose at the same time. In an instant, the turtle shell behind General Turtle appeared in his hand. Chi La! Two figures moved at the same time. One of them held a sturdy tortoise shell while the other held an exquisite spear. They attacked Chu Bei from the left and right respectively. However, just as their attacks were about to land on Chu Bei, a terrifying shockwave exploded with Chu Bei as the center. Under this shockwave, General Turtle and General Shark felt their bodies sink as though they were being crushed by a giant mountain that weighed millions of tons. Bang! In the next moment, there was a loud boom. The two figures crashed straight down, creating a huge crater that was tens of meters deep on the surface of the Dragon Palace. The entire Dragon Palace was shaking because of this violent movement. So powerful! Where did he come from? Could it be that he's a mountain demon with great cultivation? General Turtle and General Shark didn't even have the strength to fight back. Quick, get the Dragon King! Looking at the two deep pits, the prawn soldiers and crab generals who were watching the battle immediately took a few steps back to distance themselves from Chu Bei. The Flood Dragon King, who was still in the grasp of the rippling hand, glanced at General Turtle and General Shark in the two deep pits. He sighed faintly, feeling pity and relief at the same time. After all, he was not as miserable as they were. If you're here as a guest in the Dragon Palace, as the host, I'll naturally welcome you. But now, fellow immortal, aren't you looking down on me a little too much? Before the prawn soldiers and crab generals who were about to report left, a majestic voice came from the depths of the hall. Then, a burly figure flew out from the hall. He was wearing a long golden robe with dragon patterns engraved on it. The dragon head on his chest looked especially powerful. The most obvious feature of this person was the pair of golden dragon horns on his head. "Greetings, Dragon King!" Seeing the person who came, the prawn soldiers and crab generals quickly knelt on the ground with utmost respect. Even the Dragon King, who was being held in the air by the rippling giant hand, lowered his head in worship. "I'm here. Are you still not willing to let go of the black dragon?" The Dragon King of the East Sea snorted coldly. Immediately, immortal chi surrounded his body. A vast and powerful soul suppression shrouded Chu Bei. However, in the next moment, his face changed. An even more terrifying soul suppression surged from the opposite side. Bam! The Dragon King of the East Sea's face turned pale. He spat out golden blood and flew out like a cannonball. He crashed into a stone pillar, and finally landed on the ground. Did the Dragon King fight with him just now? And he was defeated? Impossible! Who is he? Why would such a person come to our dragon palace? Looking at the Dragon King of the East Sea who was flying out, the prawn soldiers and crab generals were immediately numb. It was as if they had been struck by lightning. They stood there in a daze like wooden blocks. General Turtle and General Shark, who had climbed up from the deep pit, were also dumbfounded when they saw this scene. Their faces were filled with disbelief, as if they couldn't believe what they had seen. Unlike them, who were only recorded in the Heavenly Soldier record, the Dragon King of the East Sea was a real immortal official. According to the classification of this world, the Dragon King of the East Sea had already entered the itinerant immortal realm. However, such an existence with an official position in the heavenly court was sent flying just now. They didn't even see how he attacked. "This is just a small punishment for your offense just now. If you dare to be rude again, I'll let you report to the King of Hell." Looking in the direction where the Dragon King of the East Sea was sent flying, Chu Bei snorted coldly. His indifferent and cold voice carried supreme power. Chu Bei's indifferent and dignified voice rang in his ears. The Dragon King of the East Sea coughed out blood. His face was filled with pain as he flew back to Chu Bei's side. "I heard that fellow immortal's purpose of coming here is to exchange the Black Flood Dragon for some weapons. May I know how many weapons fellow immortal needs?" The Dragon King of the East Sea tidied his clothes and looked at Chu Bei with fear. Although he looked much more polite on the surface, it wasn't difficult to detect the hatred in his eyes. "About 1,000. I'll go take a look at the Dragon Palace's treasury." Chu Bei naturally noticed the unwillingness and hatred in the Dragon King of the East Sea's eyes. However, under the suppression of absolute strength, he didn't care at all. After saying that, Chu Bei used his spiritual perception to probe the area. Chu Bei brought Sun Wukong along and turned into a rainbow as they flew toward a pavilion. Almost at the same time, the rippling giant hand disappeared, and the Dragon King landed on the ground with a boom. Looking in the direction Chu Bei flew, the Dragon King of the East Sea's expression changed drastically, and he hurriedly chased after him. "Master, there are so many weapons here!" When they arrived at the Dragon Palace's treasury, Sun Wukong's eyes shone with golden light. Looking carefully, there were hundreds of treasure chests in each row. They were dazzling, and all of them were shining with dazzling and brilliant light. In addition to all kinds of weapons, there were countless top-grade gems and luminous pearls in these chests. "Fellow immortal, this 9-pronged fork is made of dark essence iron. It weighs 3,600 kilograms and is indestructible." The Dragon King of the East Sea guided Chu Bei and Sun Wukong and introduced it personally. "Master, let me try." Sun Wukong took the lead and picked up the 9-pronged fork. At first, he couldn't lift it, but as his hands released a bright white light, he easily held the fork in his hands and swept it horizontally, making a clanging sound. "That's the monkey's technique?" The Dragon King of the East Sea couldn't help but look at Chu Bei and frown. He had already entered the itinerant immortal realm, so he naturally noticed Sun Wukong's abnormality. At first, it was difficult for Sun Wukong to pick up the 9-pronged fork, but when his hands shone with white light, the 9-pronged fork seemed to have lost its weight inexplicably and became as light as a piece of wood. If he could feel the fluctuation of spiritual power, he wouldn't be so shocked. The key was that the energy fluctuation used by Sun Wukong was very unfamiliar to him. This is the power of inheritance from the All Heavens shop. Chu Bei crossed his arms in front of his chest and smiled at the Dragon King of the East Sea. All Heavens shop? The Dragon King of the East Sea frowned tightly with confusion on his face. He had never heard of this sect. Could it be that fellow immortal is the owner of the All Heavens shop? That's right. Chu Bei nodded in response. Disciple, which ones do you like? After responding to the Dragon King of the East Sea, Chu Bei looked at Sun Wukong. Sun Wukong's eyes swept across the surrounding boxes again and scratched his head. Master, these are all good. I don't know which one to choose. Since you like them all, then take them all. Chu Bei smiled knowingly, and then waved his sleeve. In the next moment, all the boxes in the treasure pavilion flew into Sun Wukong's proxy ring. What's the difference between your actions and that of a bandit? Looking at the rows of empty boxes, the Dragon King of the East Sea's face turned ashen. Chu Bei ignored the Dragon King of the East Sea and turned to look at the excited Sun Wukong. Disciple, in addition to the treasures in those boxes, there is also a weapon that is very suitable for you. What weapon? Sun Wukong's eyes lit up when he heard Chu Bei's words. You will know soon. Chu Bei pretended to be profound. Chapter 322. You really can't touch this thing. It's not a weapon. In the depths of the Dragon Palace, the Dragon King of the East Sea looked extremely gloomy. In front of him stood a giant pillar that was shining with a dazzling golden light. My disciple, this rod was forged by Lord Dao De using the 9-turn wrought iron and Lingyang divine iron for 81 days. Now, it has absorbed the essence of heaven and earth for 10,000 years and its weapon spirit has just formed. It's the most suitable weapon. Chu Bei pointed at the godly sea-steadying needle. While Chu Bei was making the introduction, Goku had already arrived at the godly sea-steadying needle. He raised his head and looked dumbfounded. Ah! Goku put his hands on the godly sea-steadying needle and shouted. This time, not only his hands, but his entire body lit up with a white light. Even so, one could see from his slightly distorted expression that it was still a little difficult for him to pull out the godly sea-steadying needle. Rumble! With another shout, the godly sea-steadying needle shook. Then, with a roar, it broke free from the bottom of the sea. In an instant, a rolling sea tornado rose above the godly sea-steadying needle. The entire Dragon Palace shook violently as if there was a sea earthquake. This monkey, he actually pulled out the godly sea-steadying needle. Could it be that the weapon spirit in the godly sea-steadying needle has recognized him as its master? Impossible! How could the weapon spirit of the godly sea-steadying needle recognize a monkey? Could it be that there's something special about him? Seeing that Goku had successfully pulled out the godly sea-steadying needle, the prawn soldiers and crab generals were instantly shocked and incredulous. To pull out the godly sea-steadying needle, one had to be recognized by the weapon spirit not only with great strength. Master, I did it! It recognized me as its master! Sun Wukong's face was full of excitement. With a thought, the originally huge pillar quickly shrank until it became an ordinary iron rod. Ri-Jin-Gu Bang! Goku read out the 5 golden words on the godly sea-steadying needle. Bigger, bigger, bigger! Bigger, bigger! Goku shouted. The godly sea-steadying needle's volume doubled again. In the end, it reached out of the sea and reached the heavenly realm. Dragon King, on behalf of my disciple, I thank you for your gift. Chu Bei looked at the Dragon King and nodded with satisfaction. After saying that, his gaze landed on Sun Wukong, who was playing with the Ri-Jin-Gu Bang. Disciple, let's return to the Flower Fruit Mountain. Dragon King, are you letting him go just like that? Not only did he empty the treasury, he even took away the sea-stabilizing divine needle. Looking in the direction where Chu Bei and his disciple disappeared, a crab general stepped forward and looked at the Dragon King of the East Sea respectfully. What else can we do? Could it be that he had to continue fighting with him? His cultivation is above mine. I'm afraid he has already entered the golden immortal realm. The East Sea Dragon King's face was filled with resentment and indignation. Stay here and guard the Dragon Palace. I'll go to the Heavenly Court and ask the Jade Emperor to send a general to capture this All-Heaven Shop Master. Huadwa Mountain. Master, can I take a shortcut now? Goku stroked the proxy ring and looked at Chu Bei expectantly. Don't you already know the benefits of being an agent? Chu Bei's lips curled into a smile. Hearing Chu Bei's words, Goku rubbed his hands and contributed one treasure after another to the system through the proxy ring. As time passed, Goku's aura grew stronger and stronger. Immortal World, Heavenly Court. Amidst the lingering clouds, magnificent pavilions hung high in the sky, giving off an illusory feeling. Jade Emperor, you have to uphold justice for me. In the huge main hall, the East Sea Dragon King knelt on the ground and kowtowed to the blurry man wearing a dragon crown in the center of the hall. What's going on? Why don't you stay in the Dragon Palace and come here to complain? A dignified and calm voice came from the man in the center of the hall. Jade Emperor, someone trespassed the Dragon Palace. He's stronger than me. I can't beat him. Not only did he loot the Dragon Palace's treasury, he even took away the sea-stabilizing divine needle. The Dragon King of the East Sea wailed with tears and snot. There's someone who has the guts? Let me see what he looks like. The Jade Emperor was interested. I don't know where he came from. I only know that he's from Mount Wagwa. A crystal ball appeared in the East Sea Dragon King's hand. There were two figures in it. They were Chu Bei and Goku. It's him again. The Jade Emperor frowned as he looked at the figure in the crystal ball. After a while, the Jade Emperor said, Pass down my order and let Neza accompany you. Jade Emperor, you've seen this person before? The East Sea Dragon King was shocked. The Jade Emperor didn't say much. He waved his hand and signaled the East Sea Dragon King to leave. Thank you, Jade Emperor. The East Sea Dragon King kowtowed and thanked him. He got up and left. The next day. Master, where are you bringing me? Goku looked at Chu Bei in confusion. I'm going to take in a second disciple. He's also the second proxy. Chu Bei patted the monkey's head. The second proxy red dot appeared on the system map. It was in Yusang in the Aparagodania estate. Gao Laozhuang. This was the exact location marked by the red dot. Could it be that Marshal Tianping has already been banished to the lower realm for taking liberties with Chang'e? Chu Bei muttered to himself. Second disciple? Isn't that my junior brother? Goku's eyes were filled with anticipation. Let's go. Follow your master to Yusang. As soon as he finished speaking, Chu Bei flicked his sleeve and directly transformed into a wisp of light and vanished with Sun Wukong. A Paragodania state. Chu Bei frowned as soon as he entered the borders of Yusang. Above the vast land, there was actually a layer of obscure demonic energy shrouding it. Let alone ordinary people, even spirit refinement and spirit summoning cultivators would find it difficult to detect this evil energy. After Chu Bei frowned, he brought Goku and landed in the territory of the old Gao village. Master, why is this place so lifeless? Goku looked around and scratched his head. There were quite a few houses in Gao Laozhuang. Almost every 2 steps, there would be a house. But in the middle of the day, there was no sign of anyone on the bustling streets, and the doors of the houses were tightly shut. If not for the fact that some of the furnaces were still emitting smoke, outsiders would have thought that this was a ghost town. Bang! At this moment, the sound of a door closing came from a house not far from Chu Bei. Chu Bei smiled and disappeared with Sun Wukong in a single step. You, how did you get in? Daddy, there's a monster, there's a monster. Woo-woo, he's going to take us away. Don't come over. Goku is still young. If you're hungry and want to eat people, eat me. There were 3 people in this house, a couple with a girl no more than 4 or 5 years old. Seeing the 2 figures that had suddenly appeared in front of her, the girl immediately began to wail. The young couple also had a look of fear on their faces as they shielded the girl behind them. Don't be afraid. Master and I aren't monsters. Goku's words caused the girl to cry even louder. Don't be nervous. We were just passing by Yusang and noticed that the demonic chi here was very thick, so we came to take a look. Chubei said. Hearing Chubei's words, the young couple looked at Chubei and seemed to relax a little. Could it be that it's not just Gao Laozhuang, but all of Yusang has encountered the same thing as us? Tell me about it. Chubei warmly smiled and nodded at the young couple. Thinking about how Chubei had managed to sneak into the house without anyone noticing, the young man took a deep breath and said, If Sir is an immortal, please exterminate the monster. Since half a month ago, the village has been losing 200 people every 3 days. Someone saw that it wasn't just one monster that was taking these people away. They were all incredibly powerful, and ordinary people like us couldn't fight against them. The first time someone was captured, those of us who survived were somewhat lucky. However, the second and third time, the people in the manor fell into a state of panic and no longer dared to go out. Even so, people were still disappearing from the village. Today is the 3rd day. Logically speaking, those monsters should be coming to capture people again. For this reason, when I saw Sir and this monkey sage appear in the village, I closed the door tightly, thinking that the monsters had come to capture people. After saying this, the young man tightly hugged his wife and daughter, as if he was afraid that they would disappear. Do you know where the nest of these monsters is? Chubei asked the young man with a smile on his face. Although his spiritual sense had already scanned the entire Gao Laozhuang, the journey to the west seemed to reject his spiritual sense. He couldn't lock onto the demonic chi at all. The young man shook his head. Although I don't know, Grand Duke Gao's pig sage knows. Pig sage? Hearing this, Chubei couldn't help but twitch his mouth. His intuition told him that this pig sage was Zhu Beiji. Grand Duke Gao's house is at the end of the road ahead. It's the biggest mansion, the young man said. Got it. Chubei responded calmly, then waved his right hand and disappeared with Goku. Run! Everyone, run! Pig demon! So Pig Sage is a pig demon! We've been tricked, we've all been tricked! When Chubei appeared in front of the Gao mansion with Goku, he saw a group of people running out in a panic. On this day when everyone was in a state of panic, the Gao mansion was out of the ordinary. Not only was the door wide open, but the mansion was also decorated with lanterns and colored banners. At a glance, one could see the word joy pasted everywhere. Father-in-law, don't be afraid, I'm really not a pig demon. A powerful roar came from inside the mansion. Master, is that the pig demon they were talking about? Monkey's son exclaimed as he looked up into the sky. There was a figure floating in the air. It was fat and had a big belly. Below the neck, it looked like a human, but above the neck was a pig's face. It had short hair, a long beak, and big ears. Just looking at it made people want to avoid it. Go, all of you go! If anyone can take down this pig demon, I'll marry Huilan to him today! Grand Duke Gao's face was filled with fear as he gave the order to his subordinates. Hearing this, the subordinates hesitated. They looked at the beautiful woman in the red dress and mustered their courage to shoot arrows at the pig demon in the air. Huilan is mine! Don't even think about touching her! Looking at the arrows, the pig demon seemed to be enraged. A 9-toothed rake appeared in his hand and he swung it. The majestic spiritual power directly shattered the incoming arrows. When it landed on the bodies of the servants, they were directly sent flying and fainted on the spot. You're tuning into the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.